We're streaming, the stream it starts right now. We're streaming, turn that frown upside down. Let's talk about the capitalism. I don't have a rhyme with capitalism, so the song ends now. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm having a real weird one, man. I gotta be straight with you. I have always avoided watching the show Breaking Bad. Everybody around me is constantly like, Breaking Bad, so good. Oh my god, Breaking Bad, it's so good. And I've like completely avoided it because just listening to what it is about seems like incredibly triggering to me for my depression. And then suddenly it pops up on Netflix, and I think to myself, you know what? I'm feeling okay these days. I think I'm okay. Because my background is theater, my background is art, my background is film and all of this, and so it's like, okay, I'm going to actually grab a hold of this show and start watching it. Straight up, it's like, oh, like right away. It's funny though. Like it's a funny show. Like it's like dealing with really heavy themes, but like the characters in them like feel real and are doing stupid things all the time and are like in the like just in the first few episodes they had to flip a coin and they're like talking about like the coin flip is sacred, man. Like that's pretty funny. But I can tell that this show is going to get darker. I can tell this show is going to get more like just from what I know about it. And hey, Demand Better, how you doing? Which Reddit post you talking about? I think I'm the top comment on that Reddit post. Which Reddit post are you talking about, bud? I mean, congratulations. But the themes of Breaking Bad are like so. It's so despicable that Americans are still discussing single payer healthcare while a show like Breaking Bad exists. Like the whole thrust of the show. It's the Diglett one on the screen. Yeah, I'm about to talk about that one. Are you? Well, let's go. Are you the one on Canada Left or are you on the RNDP, bud? Because I am subscribed to Canada Left. I'm not subscribed to RNDP. Maybe I should subscribe to RNDP. But the like Walter White's whole arc is that he has he gets diagnosed with lung cancer. Hey Vince, how you doing, bud? He gets diagnosed with lung cancer, and so he starts making meth in order to pay for his lung cancer treatments and to make extra money so that he doesn't so that his family doesn't end up in huge medical debt, right? Like that's the whole thing about Breaking Bad, and the idea that a show like Breaking Bad got made in the United States. And then there's this enormous like Medicare for all conversation that happened, and it's still not happening. I mean, it just tells you where Western capitalism is at. Why it exists? It doesn't exist. That like, and if Walter White lived in Canada, the story would be he's a teacher and then he's got lung cancer and he goes and he gets his treatments and like maybe he dies, but. Like, at no point would we be like, yeah, and then he goes and sells drugs to be able to pay for his medical care. Like, that just is not going to be part of that conversation, right? Like, it's just not going to be part of the conversation. And so, I'm looking forward to going deeper on Breaking Bad, but I am also very, very concerned because I can feel it. I feel every single episode I watch it, I feel it, like, scraping at the door of my depression, right? Like, I feel it. Just like scraping at the door, and I'm very certain that there's going to be an episode where it'll crack open the door and the depression will just come pouring out. I'm sure it's the truth. So I've been like working out while I've been watching it. I've been like doing the active stuff, but I feel like I do have to, and maybe I shouldn't binge it. Like maybe I'll watch like one episode every few days instead to try and like. Because, like, it's heavy subject matter, and it's deeply connected to American politics. All right. With that said, I love this meme, first of all. Who's that Pokemon? It's Diglett, Green Party, Grave, Enemy Paul. Yeah, the Green Party's in trouble. Now, to be fair, to Annamie Paul and to the Green Party generally, the MP that switched to the Liberal Party, her claim was that she was leaving the Green Party because of their Israel stance, and that she was saying that she had a kind of anti-Israel stance, and now that she's in the Liberal Party, she's walking back those claims, right? So it's to me, I initially said, like, oh, this is a trouble with leadership and organization in the Green Party. I think that we can safely say now that this lady who jumped from the Green Party to the Liberal Party is just a careerist, right? All these claims that, like, it harkens the end of the Green Party and all of this, probably not. It does mean that Annamie Paul has a leadership. They're gonna try and get rid of her as a leader over this for sure. It's gonna be like a big internal thing. And yeah, maybe Dimitri Lakaris can run again for leadership. I actually think Dimitri is likely to become the leader of the Green Party eventually anyway, as the Green Party becomes more and more socialist, as more and more people, and like the Green Party is, in my view, going to be like what socialists and communists are going to point to and be like, this, we can take parties over. We can take parties over. Like, we can do it. We just need to get organized and actually go and do it. Because, as I say all the time on this live stream, politics is fundamentally a numbers game. If you show up with 1,000 people and they show up with 100 people, you win. It doesn't matter what the structure of the system is. It doesn't matter what the whole electoral reform thing. Like, the farther I get away from it, the more I see that this is just a method to kind of demoralize the populace, right? Oh, we didn't get electoral reform, so that means I can't be represented, so why participate anyway? When the reality is like, sure, we should be pushing for electoral reform, that's great, but engagement with the system is what matters the most, right? That it doesn't matter what the structure of the system is, truly. If you show up with 1,000 people and they show up with 100 people, you win. If you show up with 10,000 people and they show up with 1,000 people, you win, right? And it doesn't matter what the structure of the system looks like. So to me, what matters more is strictly engagement. And when I look at the people who are actually engaging in the Green Party, it's socialists, right? It's socialists. And so to me, it's a matter of time for somebody like Dimitri Lakaris to take over. Agreed, the ONDP has a lot of public anger that they could capitalize on, but they're always so afraid of being painted as extremists, it undermines them. That's absolutely the truth. And they always end up coming across, I say this all the time on this channel, they always end up coming across as weak. They always end up coming across as just like kicky and fun and, oh, ting, right? Like kick the heel up kind of thing. And it's just like, no, like, people are mad. People are angry. There's people living in tents. Like, there's people living in tents. Like, I just don't... I'm very, very concerned that the NDP are going to come out and instead of, like, trying to galvanize that anger, they're going to try to, like, you know, essentially take that, like, that poster of the cat hanging off a branch, being like, hey, hang in there, kitty, and that's going to be, like, the inspiration for their whole campaign. And it's like, no, we need, like, forceful strength and anger. Like, that's really what we're at. And I'm very... Hey, Robin, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. Just so you guys know, I'm going to be really upfront about this. At 7 o'clock, I'm going to sing a song. I was doing the practice. I was practicing the song earlier, and my upstairs neighbor started to thump on the floor because I have a very powerful voice. So... when I sing it, it won't be so dramatic. I'm gonna pull back on it because I'm worried that I'm gonna get somebody knocking on my door being like, "Your singing is too loud," and I'm like, "It's 7 o'clock. Like, who gives a shit?" So this is big news. This is actually really big news. 296 new cases. That's low. That's really low. 296. Is an incredibly low amount of cases. Like, we are getting to the point now where reopening is no longer a pipe dream, where it is possible even that this pandemic could be drawing to an end. It is, like, even a cynic like me, even somebody who's like angsty like I am, is willing to start saying, like, it is possible that we could be getting to a legitimate reopening. And, like, not only a reopening, but just, like, the pandemic is over, right? Like, it could be that way. The only big question mark is still the variants. That there are variants, and there are lots of places in the world that have not gotten this vaccine, and so there are still curveballs that could still come our way, but I think being cautiously optimistic at this point is not irrational. Not irrational. So I know I'm going to keep wearing my mask. But I feel like I'm going to keep wearing my mask because since this pandemic has started, like, I used to get sick all the time. I would get sick like 3 or 4 times a year for sure. Anytime anything came through, I would get it. And since we've been doing this mask thing, I haven't been sick once. So I'm going to keep wearing the mask because I just think it's good for public health generally. QAnon knows no borders. Oh, really? Resist the fake news. Freedom is your duty. Fear not. In God we trust. Trudeau must go. I mean, what about that is QAnon? I mean, this guy's a bit weird. But, like... Okay. Hi, Ruth. How you doing? ERCOT has issued a conservation alert, and Texans are being asked to safely reduce their electricity use. Wow, capitalism is so cool. Glad we have all these markets that might kill grandma every couple months so some asshole can add an extra golf simulator to his ranch house. Yeah, that's exactly right. Hi, Robert. How you doing, bud? YouTube just shadow banned my comment that said back to the slave labor. Yeah, I'm yet to find any consistency in that. That sometimes people put comments up and the algorithm just kind of grabs it. I bet you it's the word slave. That's what I bet. That like it's picking up swears and it's picking up that kind of stuff. And, like, you got to remember they're trying to make it so that the chat is less. The chat is less cluttered, right? Like that there are trolls. I had some trolls on yesterday, right? And so they're just trying to clean it up and make it so that it's like, okay. So I bet you it's just the word slave, and it's probably because it was your first post, right? Like that you came into the chat and the first thing you said was back to slave labor. So the algorithm's like, guy popped in, said something kind of controversial, just delete it, right? And I bet you if you had posted a few times and we had a conversation and then you had to make that comment, I bet it would have gone through. So anyway, that's a theory. I don't know everything about the algorithm. I wish that they would just release, like, what the algorithm is looking for, right? I just wish that they would be more upfront about that. But the idea that it's, like, shadowy and behind the scenes, that's what makes it crazy. Hey, Barnabas. Speaking of Barnabas, I'm going to show some of the stuff that Barnabas has been making in his spare time. Do you like to argue in bad faith? Like others not having your money? Hate the arts? Suspicious of the sciences? Pulled yourself up by your bootstraps of your dad's wealth? Are okay with CEOs getting bonuses with government handouts? Then vote conservative. This one's my favorite. I like this one the best. Because it's the same kind of statements, but I like the picture, and I like the burning parliament. That's really nice. And then we got another one here. And you put in some other stuff on this one, bud. You despise art. Oh, you cleaned things up too. Despise art, ignore science, pulled yourself up by your dad's wealth, caring about a baby inside the mother but leave it to starve once born. Find you agree with Hitler. By the third one, you were feeling a bit sassy, I can tell. Can't take personal responsibility, can't calculate a budget, then vote conservative. Yeah. I don't really get this one, bud. Like, this is Mao, right? Like, you've used Mao, trickle-down economics, but it's Reagan. I don't really get what statement you're trying to make here, but I do appreciate the... yeah, and then there's this. Total adherence to one party is dictatorship. Meanwhile, the Republican Party. Shouldn't this be Trump? Shouldn't this be Trump? Anyway. Thanks for making those, bud. That's super fun. And that's just a taste of what you guys get if you come in to, if you donate to the Discord, or donate to the Patreon, you get into the Discord, and you get to hang out with cool people like Barnabas and keep the community going, right? Yeah, that's true. Before Trump, it was Reagan. And also, the Make America Great Again is a Reagan riff, right? It is a continuation of Reaganism. So Donald Trump's Make America Great Again is because Reagan was saying, he wasn't saying Make America Great, was he? But he was saying something along those lines. And so Donald Trump basically just, that slogan is a continuation of Ronald Reagan. And, which is funny to me because Ronald Reagan dismantled a bunch of nukes, right? Ronald Reagan raised taxes. There's this let's make America great. That's right. So make America great again, right? So, sort of implies that America has gone through a decline, but we can do it. We can pop it back up. And of course, if it's gone into a decline, well, whose fault is that? Must be the Democrats, right? So we need to go back to this mystical time that where Ronald Reagan was the greatest president of all time. They've erected a mysticism and a mythology around Ronald Reagan that doesn't actually exist, right? All of these neoliberal fascists are no taxes on the wealthy, and meanwhile Ronald Reagan raised taxes on the wealthy. He didn't raise them to crazy stupid amounts, but he did raise them. He didn't cut taxes for the wealthy. He denuclearized. He was actually one of Ronald Reagan's great achievements, if you ask me, was that he actually communicated to the rest of the world, and they started to de-escalate the nuclear the nuclear buildup. And then it's under George W. Bush that they start to rebuild up nuclear bombs again. Yeah, it's a cult of personality for sure. Yeah, Ronald Reagan also had Alzheimer's, but we're starting to realize, I think, as a nation that I'd say about 40% of the time, maybe even more than that, 50% of the time, it seems like the president has some kind of mental illness. Because, by the time you become the president of the United States, you're old, right? You're old. Donald Trump certainly has dementia, and had dementia while he was in office. That's certainly the truth. Joe Biden definitely has something. I don't think Joe Biden has dementia, but he does have something. He's got something going on, for sure. And then, George W. Bush, there's very credible evidence to show that he also was suffering from some kind of cognitive decline, right? Again, I don't think it was dementia, but it was a cognitive decline. And Obama didn't have anything going on, but that's because he was so young, right? He was amongst the youngest presidents in the history of the nation. So, so by the time you're the president of the United States, you're in that sort of threatening territory in the first place. It's the CIA brain chips. I'm sorry to hear that, Ruth. My dad had symptoms for 15 years before he lost himself the last year. That's tough. That's tough. I used to work in funeral services, right? And I will never forget, there was this one woman who we came to the scene, and she was very stressed and up, and her mother had suffered from dementia, and you could tell this woman had really taken on herself to take care of her mother, and so she was in this heightened state, of course, because her mother has just died. And then so she asks us, she goes, okay, well, what now? What do I do? What now? And we looked at her and we said, nothing, right? From now, everything is going to be taken care of by the funeral homes and all of that. You just need to show up at the funeral, so you don't have to do anything. And she said, I don't have to do anything? And we went, yeah, that's correct. And I will never forget the transformation that took place in front of me. Over the space of 5 seconds, this woman melted. I don't know how else to describe this. She just melted downwards, and all of this angst and anxiety and concern and worry that existed inside of her just sort of vanished, and there was like a completely new person in front of me. And it was incredible to watch. It was incredible to see, and it really, really, really stuck with me. And so it really convinced me, like, when you have a loved one who's going through some kind of like mental illness or some kind of and is carrying a burden like that around, and it has an impact on us in ephemeral, spiritual ways, existential ways that we can't really understand. Anyway, that's why I recognized a lot of things that Trump did: anger, aggression, making up lies, thinking everyone is an enemy. Yeah, and his inability to maintain the mask, right? His inability to, because he would like make up lies about himself, but he couldn't like maintain lies of empire, right? Like that's why he was constantly like, that's why he was constantly saying like, yeah, we went over there for oil, right? Like it's like, okay, so he can't maintain the fiction, the metafiction, but he wants to lie about how great he is as a person, and it's kind of like you turn into kind of there's a more childish outlook, like you kind of revert back to being a child. Hitler was injected with a like meth and heroin mixed by his doctor. Yeah, Mussolini was reported to haven't spoken a single word during one meeting because Adolf wouldn't shut up. Yeah, and that meeting was apparently Mussolini wanted to pull out of World War II. He wanted to pull out of it, but Hitler basically just override. You do think that Trump, of course Trump was being taken advantage of. Yeah, of course he was. Even by his own family, I think. Like his own family, like they're all just careerists, right? They see this as a path to power. There's this really, really like crazy photo. I wonder if I could find it. Trump wins election family photo. I wonder if I can find it, because it was like, this is a photo that's really stuck with me. I wish I had have shared it at the time. But there's this really great photo where Trump is like sitting at a table, and they're announcing that he's won. Trump election win announcement, and they're announcing that he wins, and he's sitting there at the table, and you can see he's just like, I can't believe it. You can see the look on his face of just like, I cannot believe that I've actually won. But his son is, I can't find it, but his son is standing beside him, and he's got his hands like literally like this. His face is red, and he's just like, got this crazed look on his face where you can see that the like power is surging through him. It's like when he's like Jafar turning into the genie, right? He's just like, the power. You can see it. And since that time, Trump Jr. has been grooming himself to be the next president, right? Like, Trump Jr. for sure is going to take a run at it. Like, Trump Sr. is going to take another run at it for sure. But Trump Jr., he's going to also take a run for it. And he's trying to capture that energy, and he's trying to get all of that funneled in, for sure. I feel sorry for Biden, who is so obsessed with China, almost like, if not more than his predecessor Trump. Can't get his eyes off China for a day. It is so bad for the health, especially for a 78-year-old. I love China is like throwing so much shade at America for obvious reasons. Like they know that America is going to do everything it can to upset what's going on, and they're pretty aware that like this ends in some kind of military conflagration. They're pretty aware of it. I think it's more about getting his stuff than anything. Bet Ivana ran the kids since she thinks she's the real first lady. Yeah, there's a real creepy relationship going on there for sure. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's Nah. Ford invokes notwithstanding clause to prevent people from pointing out what a fucking piece of shit he is. The Beaverton, man. The Beaverton, just nailing it. Yeah, United Nations Security General urging world leaders to consider unconditional basic income. It's because, like, I don't understand how this is difficult, okay? There was this massive transfer of wealth from the populace to the upper echelon, like the upper, like, 5-10% of the society, because that's how capitalism is structured. And it's, like, obvious. Like, you have to be, like, completely brain dead and stupid to think that, like, the money didn't get traveled upwards. Like, even hard right, like, fascist organizations, even organizations like the Fraser Institute is like, yeah, there was a transfer of wealth upwards, yeah. And it was structural, yeah. Like, everyone agrees that this is the truth. And so now they're saying, like, we're going to reopen the economy and everything's going to be great and the economy's going to go rip-roaring. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, no one has any money, dumb nuts. Like, no one has any money. What the hell are you talking about? Oh, the economy's going to rip. No one has any money. How many economies have you seen where no one has any money and it works? Like, you just have to be thick to think this way. And so I'm glad to see the Secretary General being like, yeah, basic income. And also, like, we've tested it, like, hundreds of times by now. Like, and every single time, wow, the people that get that money, their lives improve and everything's much better. And and their productivity increases. They work harder, right? Like, all of the bullshit lies that the neoliberal fascists were putting at the doorstep of basic income proponents have borne out and been completely false. Completely false in every single way. Yeah, she has to be. Like, she's Donald Trump's daughter. She has to be nuts. Breaking news, bombing in Gaza. Are you serious? Are you friggin' serious with that? I bet you Al Jazeera. I bet you Al Jazeera's on it. Come on, Al Jazeera. No, go away. Go away. Go away. Go away. Save it close. Oh my god. Oh no, I hit the wrong thing. Protests against Israeli far-right march through Jerusalem. Like, did this just happen? Shit. Okay. This sucks. Why? Why? Do you have a link, bud? You can put the link in the chat. I've changed it now so that you can put links in the chat. Oh, please don't be bombing Gaza. So, well, and Ruth, the rich are afraid it's coming, so they're fighting with every ounce of their beings. Like, I'm of the opinion that eventually they have to capitulate because they're out of ideas, right? Yeah, I just changed. It was very simple, right? I just had to make a small change. No one's ever tested it, though, so I don't know if it's actually working, but give it a shot. See, and please, I really would like to see a link on this. I'd like to see, because I'm just finding, and typically it's Al Jazeera. Like, Al Jazeera is what I would look at, and they would have it right here if Gaza was being bombed. But if it just started, like if it just started, I can see why there would be a bit of a lag. Okay. Okay. David Mastrossi. Israel is bombing Gaza while Jewish supremacists conduct another round of pogroms in Jerusalem. Okay. I can't take these British commentators anymore. Every other sentence is a statement turned into a question. See, I was sort of hoping that Netanyahu was using the bombing of Gaza as an excuse to sort of deflect attention of his own citizenry away, and that finally, like, Biden came in and there was like an intervention because it's attracting far too much international attention, and that Netanyahu ends up getting removed because, like, there's just too much pressure going on, and that they would put in a new guy, and that the new guy would at least be like, try to, like, at least keep things quiet for a little bit. Yeah, what's the point of a no-fire agreement if you're just going to fire? Oh, man. I did not think that we'd be going back into this Gaza-Israel stuff so soon. Fuck. Okay. Google Maps. Google Maps. Time to open Google Maps. It's kind of tragic to sing a song while this shit is going on. But consistency. Consistency. Let's stay consistent, everyone. Okay. So they're bombing in Gaza again? Like, this is yeah, that's not insignificant. I wonder what they hit. And not to blaze over what you said here, Barnabas, somebody on Luna's chat said Peru is going through a coup as well to nullify the vote. Yeah, of course that's happening. Like, they're studying like, because it was so close too, right? Like, it could go on with all kinds of stuff. So they're gonna try all the same shit that happened in America, right? That what happened in America is now the playbook, right? And it's gonna culminate with like an insurrection attempt and all of that kind of stuff. So the articles will stop popping up soon. Yeah, it seems like a school. Are you just saying that, Barnabas, or is it like, do you have something actual on that? Yeah, looks like this is literally like this guy was talking about Snowbirds, right? Like, he's like Snowbirds and like Canada media, all this, and now suddenly it's like, oh, hey, by the way, 11 minutes ago. Shit. Dark humor. Yeah, that's how we get through this stuff. I remember when I was in funeral services, we had to make sure that we weren't saying stuff around other people, because that's how you get through it, right? Like, you're dealing with the dead, and so how you get through it is with gallows humor. But every so often there'd be a slip up, and you'd say something like, by a construction worker or saying something, and they would just be like aghast, and you're like, yeah, I mean, come work my job, bud. Yeah, it's always a school or a hospital or a water station or like an electric plant or Al Jazeera headquarters, right? That kind of stuff. If I click on that Leb update thread, they have a couple more tweets. Got it. Initial reports of Israeli aggression on Gaza. Palestinian total of 3 explosions. Yeah, this is happening like right now. Flip. Boy, do I not like that. Boy, am I not a fan of this. Like, this is like Western imperialism, like 100%. This is neocolonialism. This is the absolute attempt to just cleanse this region of Palestinians. And like, the fact that they're doing this, like, yeah, I can't imagine why the Muslim Brotherhood is so angry at Israel, right? Like, I can't imagine. Yeah. Like, 1939 Germany thought the land around them was theirs, right? Israel thinks the land around them is theirs. Like, I mean, and it's not controversial. It's like, to me, it's completely uncontroversial to connect the Zionists in Israel, and gotta call them Zionists. Remember, Zionists. It's not Judaism. It's not Israel. It's Zionism, right? And we have to make that distinction lest we get accused of anti-Semitism. And if we are not making that distinction, then we are engaging in anti-Semitism, right? And that's important. That's important to remember. So, Zionism and Zionists, it is completely accurate and completely appropriate to connect them to Nazis, right? That Nazism and Zionism are very similar to one another, and it's non-controversial to do that because we have people like Albert Einstein who did that, right? Who did that while the Zionists were beginning their Zionist like purge of what was going on, while they were beginning, right? So to make this connection between Zionism and Nazism is completely uncontroversial, right? Like to me, the people who are pretending as though it is controversial to do that are complicit. Like, that's as simple as that. Like, Zionists will pretend like it's controversial to say that, but it isn't. Completely isn't. And we're funding this. Like, we fund this. Like, and just think about that Green Party lady. So this Green Party lady leaves the Green Party over complaints about Israel, Palestine, and then the second she gets in the Liberal Party, immediately walks back on it. The next day, they start bombing Gaza. Like, I was not thinking I was going to be talking about this today. I was not thinking I was going to be talking about this today. I'm sure that Al Jazeera is going to get on this, and we're going to start seeing stuff here. But, like, looks like it's this is our source right here. Unbelievable. Okay, I'm going to be popping back into this thread, seeing if anything's going new on this. Let's just move on for now. Protesters prevent Israeli container ship from docking in Prince Rupert. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There you go. Kjudsnen, you got it. Twitter, Kjudsnen. Kjudsnen or Kjudsnet? Oh, here, let's just take a look. Okay, this is not in. Okay. I'm just gonna, for now, we're just gonna move on. Just gonna move on, because I mean, like, this is the story that we know, that there's like a bombing that's happened, and we're gonna take a look back on this every 15 minutes or so, see if anything new has come our way. So, okay. And we'll also leave Al Jazeera open, because they will definitely start to report on this immediately. Because I mean, they have a building in the region, for goodness sakes. Man, I hate this. But it's the reason why I'm doing this live stream. It's the reason why I'm doing this channel, man. Like, we need to be talking about this kind of stuff, because this spills into our own borders, right? Like, the conflict and how the conflict is being engaged in Israel is going to spill into the United States. Yeah. Please do let me know, Dan Boxes. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Hey, Onward, how you doing, bud? We're just talking. There's renewed conflict in Gaza. They're bombing again. Here's the footage that we have. Happened probably about an hour ago. And it's just being updated. You can see 29 minutes. So We're back. We're back to it. Democracy thrives when the infrastructure of democracy is strong. When people have the right to vote freely, fairly, and conveniently. When a free and independent press pursues the truth. When the law applies equally to everyone, regardless of who they are or what they look like. So the U.S. is not a real democracy, according to Biden. Yeah. So this here, Canada, EU in raw materials pact to cut China reliance. Like, this is how insane neoliberal capitalism got over the last 40 years. Like, it's stupid that you would send your manufacturing base to other nations from just like a strictly national security, and like maybe they're friendly and maybe they're nice or all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But the idea that you're like relying on another nation when you have the capacity to do it yourself is just stupid. Like, it's just a stupid thing to do. And so a headline like this, Canada, EU, and Raw Materials Pact, like, to me it might as well read, Canada and EU come to senses. Realize that reliance on other nations for materials is a dumb idea. Like, and even if they're the most friendly people in the world and you love them and everything's great, right? Like, if you have the resources yourself, and if you have the populace and you can create a manufacturing base and you can do all that kind of stuff, you should. You should. It's just smarter. So that if something happens and if supply lines get broken, or if there's trouble, or perhaps the nation that you're relying on falls into turmoil itself, right? It just has an internal turmoil, or it has a war with one of its neighbors, or it gets attacked itself, or its economy collapses, or there's a coup, or anything, right? There's a million things that can happen. Well, then you're not scrambling around trying to fix everything yourself. That we've got our manufacturing base, here it is, right? We've got all of this organization, we're in place, everything's good to go, but neoliberal capitalism demands, nope, you got to hollow out your society, right? So that we can erect all of that in slave camps in like India and China. And then when the time comes for us to actually manufacture anything, well, we don't know how because we've forgotten. So it's stupid. It's just stupid across the face of it. Saw this headline. Are advertisers coming for your dreams? Yes. Brands from Xbox to Coors to Burger King are teaming up with some scientists to attempt something similar. Engineer advertisements into willing consumers' dreams via video and audio clips. Yeah, of course. Of course they're going to try this stuff, dude. Of course they're going to try this stuff. They're sociopaths, right? They only have one objective. Like, and it's not to help you. My dreams aren't weird enough. I need to meet the Geico lizard in them. Yeah, exactly. It's bad enough that like my former boss shows up with like supermodel Cindy Crawford and we're in like a cloud plane flying over Seattle while a giraffe floats down from the sky saying, "Isn't it a pleasant Monday chocolate moon?" Right? Like, that's bad enough. Now it needs to be like, brought to you by Coors. Like, no. No thanks. U.S. asks China to make tanks. China, okay. U.S. declares war on China. China stops making U.S. tanks. China, U.S. shocked Pikachu. Yeah. No, it's so stupid. Like, the whole thing is just, it's stupidity upon stupidity. And stuff like this Gaza thing, like, it was bad enough that we had, like, a whole moment of that when Netanyahu was on his way out. And that's actually something to remember, right? Netanyahu was on his way out. So what did he do? He squalled like a baby and bombed a place, right? Well, guess what? The U.S. is on its way out. What do you think it's going to do? It's going to squall like a baby and bomb people on its way out. It's what it's going to do. And, like, here's case in point. Man, do I ever hate this. You bet onward. Thanks for popping in, bud. Capitalists. Capitalism is the only system that lets you chase your dreams. Also capitalists. Fuck art degrees, history degrees, literature degrees, or any other degree that's not profitable for capitalists to take advantage of. Oh yeah, that's great, bud. Putting that stuff in the Discord is perfect. That's perfect. Let's take a look. See if they've got anything new. Israeli occupation warplanes launched several airstrikes on Gaza Strip during last hour. No injuries reported. Okay. Okay. I'll take a look at these later. Because I think that's all the news we're going to get, right? That there was a strike. We'll see if it gets as bad as it was before. And let's not be like completely hysterical about this. Like, it's completely possible. Well, ahoy to you. I don't know what to call you. 00. I'll call you 0. How about that? Well, and for all we know, this is like a surgical strike, right? Which is what Israel will say, like, oh, we found out that there was like a collection of bombs in this location, so we'll just strike this spot. Like, what Netanyahu was doing was insane. What Netanyahu was doing was insane. It was like full wholesale bombing. It was just like a cleansing process. Just like on his way out, he was just like, well, I'm just going to drop a whole bunch of bombs then. Whereas this guy, I mean, he's in and I don't, who knows? Like, who knows? So we'll see if it escalates. We'll see if it gets worse. Yeah. Oh, man. I did not need to know that. Well, yes, I did. I did need to know that. I just didn't think it was going to happen so soon. NATO has brought war and chaos to the world many times. It bombed Yugoslavia for 78 days without the UN approval. Its members, US and UK, waged wars on Iraq and Syria, citing some laundry powder and staged video. It owes Chinese people a debt of blood for bombing Chinese embassy in Yugoslavia. This is coming out from a Chinese spokesperson. Like, yeah, NATO is not exactly the greatest organization that's ever lived, right? Like, let's get hecka specific. NATO wiki. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? And its membership, the United States, Canada, the EU. Where the heck am I looking here? Yeah, it was signed in 1949. Like, this is the organization that was created in order to fight continue the war effort, right? Like, really. And it's extremely telling that, like, Russia's not part of it, right? And since its inception, it really exists to kind of take the energy from World War II and continue, right? Just continue military operations in that vein. And to me, the Libya intervention, like, what happened in Libya is one of the worst war crimes of the century. Like, so the Libyan civil war, which, of course, it's the same story, right? Like, the CIA and the State Department fund separatist organizations and weaponize them. And then finally they just decided to go in and take it all out. And they literally took a nation that had one of the strongest economies, that had the strongest economy in Africa, and was rivaling European nations. And now it's like got open air slave trading, right? Like, and Gaddafi had made the promise that that his own father would not have a home until everyone in Libya had a home, and he made good on that promise. So, like, what they did to Gaddafi in Libya is like, and then right after they did that, Hillary Clinton cackles, goes, what's the exact phrase? We came, we saw, he died, ha 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 ha, and then she runs to be the president of the United States. Like, yeah, dude. Like, I will accept Donald Trump as president for one term if it means that it gets to embarrass Hillary Clinton so thoroughly. Like, what an embarrassment. Yeah. On this day in 1990, the LAPD attacked immigrant janitors associated with Justice for Janitors who were striking for the right to organize in Century City, making 2 women miscarry, hospitalizing dozens, and jailing 60 more. That's what I really like about our union. Look at this picture. They captured this picture right as this guy is beaning this guy. Oh, look at unbelievable. Like, these people are janitors, and the LAPD is, like, attacking them. Like, it's brutal. Like, for real. Like, janitors. People who are, like, trying to clean up things with brooms. And the LAPD is going in there with batons and trying to beat. Gotta find Hillary's Howard hunt? I'm not sure what you mean. Is that something I should be Googling? While today's power grab by the Ford government is unprecedented, it is far from surprising. After all, Premier Ford Nation proudly called himself a big Republican years into Donald Trump's horrendous presidency. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What Thomas Piketty's new data tells us about the Canadian left. Thomas Piketty is somebody to pay attention to for sure. Like, he is for sure, if you don't know, like, Thomas Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century is like a seminal book. And there's a reason why Western capitalists don't actually talk about it, because it would mean that they would actually have to read, and they don't read, right? Western capitalist economists are illiterate. They don't read. And when you actually do read this book, you really realize, like, his entire argument is that this idea of trickle-down economics, not only does it fail, right, but the inverse is the truth, that you have to actually support your lowest classes, like, that's where your support needs to go, in your lowest classes, and your highest classes actually need to pay taxes, right? Like, that you need to find where pools of money exist in your society, like where like, if you think about an economy like your blood stream in your body, right? Well, you want the flow to be going all the way through your body, right? And if there was a section of your body that was not getting blood flown into it, well, then you need to do something about that. And if you found that you had a pool of blood over here, right, and no blood going in here, well, there's a problem, and it needs to be rebalanced and redressed, right? And it's about that balance. And so Thomas Piketty, right? If you don't know who this guy is, you got to pay attention to this guy for sure. And, like, this is too big to read on stream. Let's see what the NDP and the Greens have another opportunity to establish a truly egalitarian post-colonial society in which indigenous peoples, settlers, and new immigrants unite to get this country through a catastrophic century. Whether as friendly rivals or as a united party, they could be our best hope of surviving as a democratic nation. Yeah. Like, gotta galvanize people, man. Howard Hunt was 60s, 70s bagman for various assassinations and ops to topple governments. JFK assassin. What? You know what, bud? You've intrigued me. Howard Hunt. Wiki? It's not E. Howard Hunt. Hard. Is it this guy? Was an American intelligence officer and author. He served as an officer at Central Intelligence Agency. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is a long dossier, man. In the ensuing Watergate scandal, Hunt was convicted. Oh, wow. Someone from the CIA actually got convicted? He actually served time? We used to have a better society, eh? Like, we actually did have, like, a better society where, like, oh, people actually had to face consequences. Like, Nixon resigned over Watergate, right? There was actual, like, arrests, and people went to jail for crimes, right? What happened to that? How come we can't, like, arrest people anymore? How come we can't actually say, like, oh hey, Jeffrey Epstein accomplices. Oh hey, people who are on Jeffrey Epstein's flight and who are obviously part of like a large scale mass pedophilia ring. Like, how come we can't arrest these people and try them? Like, how come we can't do any of this kind of stuff? And so, and it's just 100% because, like, since this era, right, since the Watergate era and the whole thing, we've reconfigured the society so that there's billionaires now, right? So that everything can just be funneled away with money, right? That, like, if you try to investigate any of this stuff, well, you could just obfuscate with like shell companies and offshore this and offshore that. And so we've allowed like individuals to just have enormous power, which of course they're using for evil. Because as soon as you're a billionaire, you become evil, right? Like, you just become a sociopath. There's no such thing as a good billionaire. It just doesn't exist. And the only good billionaire is a person who gives away all their money so they're no longer a billionaire. Like, that's the only way that you can recant or chase it away, right? Like, I look at somebody like what's her name, J.K. Rowling. Like, J.K. Rowling was like a billionaire. She was the first person to become a billionaire and then to cease being a billionaire, right? And she did it just because she gave away all her money, right? She just gave away all her money. And in so doing, like, probably chased away the sociopathic nature of being a billionaire. Oh yeah, there's a lot here, dude. This, and of course, like, I recently saw a YouTube video that I will put up, but I won't actually play. Oh hey, it's me. Look, it's me. So YouTube redacted tonight. I wonder if I can find it actually, JFK, because he has been saying lots and lots that, like, they have like a whole thing about it. Is this it? Yeah, I think this is it. No. Anyway, Redacted Tonight did like a whole thing about the JFK assassination and how it looks like the CIA was far more... The only good billionaire is a redacted by algorithm billionaire. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyhow. All right, let's see if there's any new info on this. Nothing yet. Okay. It's striking how some commentators who are very attentive to anti-Jewish racism, particularly around its Israel-Palestinian manifestations, somehow manage to not hear the death to Arabs chants in Jerusalem. Yeah. Yep. Abby Martin went to Israel and went around and just talked to like regular citizens about Arabs and Gaza and all of this. And the amount of just like casual racism that she encountered was striking. It was just striking that there are just like regular people walking around in Israel being like, yeah, we should kill these guys. Whatever, we should purge them. Yeah, I'm part of an organization that, we don't want Arabs and Israeli people to be marrying, right? Like, just like casually, like, flicking out, like, yeah, we should destroy these people for sure. Yeah, they're basically animals, right? Like, geez, okay. Oh yeah, this is what today's video is about. Critics slam group buying $1 billion in houses for rentals. Yeah, so we experienced this massive transfer of wealth upwards, right? The billionaire class got even richer while the rest of us got poorer. And what are they spending their money on? Well, they're buying up all our housing, right? Like, literally, they're making it. They can outbid anybody. So if you're just like an independent person who you want to buy a house so you can live in it and you can have a house, well, too bad. You'll get outbid 20 to 50% every single time, and that'll just automatically happen. They're like, oh, okay, so that's on sale. So, like, literally, hey, person who's selling this, yeah, you can try to raise the price, do whatever bidding war you want. We don't care. We will always pay you 20% more, 100% of the time, right? So do whatever game you want. I have $1 billion. I don't care. Okay, thanks. Bye. Click. Right? Like, They literally, once you have $1 billion, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the cost of these things are, right? Like, you're competing with just like people who are working a job, doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? And it doesn't matter anymore. Like, I have friends who are lawyers and doctors and engineers, and they're just like, yeah, no, we'll never have a house. I'm like, so you're working your whole life in a prestigious, like, high-level job where historically you're at the, like, top echelon of the society. Everybody respects these jobs, and you can't get a house. No, there's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with us. And yeah, go check out that video, because I go into that way more in depth. Remember, capitalism is working perfectly. You're supposed to be exhausted and worried you'll lose your income and die penniless. It makes it easier to treat you like shit and pay you less. If you're worrying about the rent, you're not focusing on tearing down this unfair system. And, like, always remember, man, always remember that the former Fed, Alan Greenspan on keeping workers, on worker insecurity, yeah. When Alan Greenspan was testifying before Congress in 1997 on the marvels of the economy he was running, he said straight out that one of the bases for the economic success was imposing what he called greater worker insecurity. If workers are more insecure, that's very healthy for the society. Because if workers are insecure, they won't ask for wages, they won't go on strike, they won't call for benefits. They'll serve the masters gladly and passively. And that's optimal for corporations' economic health. At the time, everyone regarded Greenspan's comment as reasonable, judging by the lack of reaction and the great acclaim he enjoyed. Name last. Hey, how you doing, bud? I don't think I've seen you here. Thanks for popping in. Like, share, subscribe. Now's the perfect time. Like, share, subscribe, guys. Please. It warms my heart, makes me feel good about myself. Conspiratorial take via the Great Reset. There's no conspiracy, right? Okay, so here's your take, is that by leveling the wealth disparity so that only a handful has wealth, that over a generation of that you have no assets, that they institute a sort of capitalist feudalism. That's not a conspiracy. That's exactly what's happening, right? It's not a conspiracy. Don't call it a conspiracy, because it's not a conspiracy. It's exactly what's happening, right? That the wealth has been transferred upwards. We've watched that happen. It's measurable, right? You can see it. It's not a secret, right? What are they doing with that wealth, right? What are they doing with that wealth? Oh, of course, Abby Martin. Abby Martin, you're so exactly. I don't know why I'm not following Abby Martin. I'm so bad at Twitter, you guys. I'm so bad at Twitter. Like, I am the worst. Is this actually Abby Martin? Yeah. And it's so odd that I'm not following Abby Martin because I'm in love with her. Like, it's not untrue at its base, old man. Okay, I've been called worse. Yeah, Gaza fights for freedom. I'm glad that she's still pushing on that. Israel just bombed Gaza again in response to balloons. Are you serious? Are you friggin' serious? Here's the BBC on it. PM Bennett says balloons should be treated the same way as rockets, which means carpet bombing civilians. Are you serious? Yes, Che Guevara's birthday was yesterday, Barnabas. That's right. Happy birthday, Che Guevara. That's it. That's all I have to say about it. Just like, yep. And of course the BBC is saying incendiary balloons, but like we know the BBC is full of shit, right? Like they'll call bottle rockets like rockets, right? Like it's like the most ridiculous bullshit. So like who knows? So the story is balloons. And so let's drop bombs from like a facility or like from a jet fighter or something. It's ridiculous. Well, and like name last, the Great Reset is a term that is going to be used to try to normalize the feudal system, right? Just how like trickle down economics was used as a way to normalize the extraction of wealth from the populace upwards, right? That the project of robbing the populace to enrich small groups of parasites was normalized by people like Thatcher, people like Ronald Reagan, people like Mulrooney, and was completely normalized with a heavy propaganda campaign, with all the sloganeering and everything that came attached to it. A rising tide raises all boats, right? Like the whole theory of trickle-down economics, of course, being a total fraud, not based in any kind of reality, and was actually called out at the time by President, by not President then, but it became President George Bush. He called it voodoo economics. He said it didn't work, right? And it doesn't work, right? But the reason why, of course, George Bush doesn't do anything about it is because it works for him, like makes him a millionaire, and then you end up with just like outright psychopaths, like Vice President Dick Cheney, right? Who's just like a total psychopath, who uses the rules that have been put in place over this trickle-down economics period to absolutely decimate not only his own nation, but tons of nations overseas, so that he could put in Halliburton, right? And he could make $1 billion, right? Like, yeah, why wouldn't Dick Cheney want to do that, right? He's a total psycho, so like, why shouldn't he do that? And so the Great Reset is being used that same way, right? And they're gonna say to us, once it starts really hurting us, they're gonna say, okay, we're going through growing pains right now. These are the tumultuous time. This is the difficult time right now. You know, okay, that's fine. Sure, things are tough now, but they're gonna get better, right? They're gonna get better. This is a reset, so we've gotta wait for everything, and then 10 years will pass, and things will have gotten worse, and we'll all be like, hey, where was all the change and all that we were promised? And the oligarchs who actually own the society, who have already retreated into their palaces behind their armed guards called the police, will just be like, oh yeah, we were lying to you, go fuck yourselves. And that'll be what happens. And the whole like idea that we're going to go to a voting booth and be like, whoa, I'll vote against that. They won't give a shit about that. That's all pretend, right? Like that's all just going to be for pretend. Like they're not going to give away their power. Like that's not going to fucking happen. Were they 99 red balloons? Yeah, trying to keep the humor up, Barnabas. I appreciate it. Mach Deutschland vom Fascismus frei. I did it that time. Basically what they did after the fall of the Soviet Union. Like the fall of the so what you're saying is like the fall of the Soviet Union happened, and they created this like kind of false narrative surrounding what occurred there, right? Like they obfuscated the fact that it was the United States kind of taking over, and like the capitalist class kind of taking over the political base within the Soviet Union, and then they pretended like it was actually like, oh yeah, communism failed. And it's like, well, no, communism didn't fail. Like it's you literally co-opted the leadership of the nation. Like, yeah, things will fail if you try to make them fail, right? Things fail if you insist they should, of course. And so, yeah, so I see where you're coming from with that. When climate change and resource depletion becomes a more serious issue in a decade, the real crunch will happen. Great Reset is understanding we don't have the ability to sustain the system. Oh, well, and like, don't forget, like, these billionaires and these oligarchs, right? They're the ones that are destroying the economy. They know, right? They're the ones planting the C4 at the base of the bridge. Like, they know. There's no bullshit. There's no bullshit there for them. They're very aware that the economy is coming down and that the whole thing is going to stop working because they're the ones that are doing it, right? So, and of course they're going to say like, oh, you know, this is the natural this, or this is the progression of that, or any of that kind of stuff. But like, the truth of the matter is, they're the ones that are responsible for it. And so they're just trying to control the descent of it. Captain Planet warned us in the 90s, bud. That's exactly right. Well, they said the transition to capitalism would be difficult at first, but it would get better. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, technically, I guess it did get better. Like, think about Ukraine, right? Like, Ukraine, after the fall of the Soviet Union, their economy just tanked. It just went boom, right? Straight down. And so did Belarus's, right? So the fall of the Soviet Union was a big deal because it really did tank everybody's economy. And I like using the Belarus-Ukraine example because it's extremely, extremely... F-off CNN guy made that... Okay. I don't know what that's in refer... Captain Planet was an op to confuse. Well, now we're talking conspiracy. Now we're talking conspiracy, name last. I like this. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in this. Okay, so I'm going to finish this point, then I'm going to play a song, and then we're going to... Oh yeah, Ted Turner did make Captain Planet, didn't he? Anyway, okay. So the comparison between Belarus and Ukraine is actually really, really good because it really gives you a very clear image of so both were impacted very badly in the fall of the Soviet Union, right? Which makes sense. The federated structure that they were all relying on disappeared. So yeah, of course their economy tanked, okay? The difference is that Ukraine plowed directly into neoliberal capitalism, whereas Belarus maintained not only its leadership, like Lukashenko was the leader during the fall of the Soviet Union, not only did they maintain the leadership, they also maintained the Soviet policies, right? And Lukashenko oversaw that kind of stuff and kept all that up. And what's the difference? Well, Ukraine has yet to recover, right? It has yet to recover to the level of economic strength that it had right before the fall of the Soviet Union, whereas Belarus's economy is actually the strongest in Europe. It has the strongest economy in Europe right now, and it's well connected to Russia. It's well connected to China. It's well connected to all this kind of stuff, and so, very clearly, communism versus capitalism. Well, you compare Belarus to Ukraine. Pretty easy to see who won. Okay, I'm going to play a song now because I promised myself that I'm going to play one song a day on my stream. I was playing this song earlier and my upstairs neighbor actually was pounding on the floor because I'm very loud. So I'm going to try to be a little bit quieter, but it might affect the quality of the song. So this is a song from the 90s, For Non-Blondes. And I think it's very, very timely. It still matters. It's still timely for what's going on. 35 years of my life and still trying to climb up that great big hill of hope for a destination. I realized quickly when I knew I should, the whole world is made of this brotherhood of man, for whatever that means. And so I cry sometimes when I'm lying in bed just to let it all out and what's in my head. And I feel a little peculiar. So I wake up in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, 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 hey, yeah, yeah. I say, hey, what's going on? try? Oh my God, do I try? I try all the time in this institution, and I pray. Oh my God, do I pray? I pray every day for a revolution. So I cry sometimes when I'm lying in bed just to let it all out and what's in my head, and I feel a little peculiar. So I wake up in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, 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 hey, yeah, yeah. I say, hey, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, 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 hey, yeah, yeah. I say, hey, what's going on? 35 years of my life and still trying to climb up that great big hill, for a destination. Ugh. Yeah, I'm glad I'm doing that. I'm glad I'm singing a song on the stream. I'm glad I'm doing that. For revolution. Do you follow Jason Unruh? No, I don't. First of all, thanks for coming in. Where Jason Unruh. All right, I'm just going to subscribe and I'll check them out later.
I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about something.
I'll check them out later. I don't know if I can play his stuff, so and I don't want to get binged. Oh, admit China's imperialism. Yeah, I mean there are critiques. Like, this is the thing that bothers me about the discourse surrounding China, right? Is that so much of it is based on fabrication, right? When there's like real things that you can talk about. Like, I talk about Hong Kong, and we should talk about Hong Kong because China is making errors in Hong Kong. Like, they're just making bad decisions in Hong Kong, right? And we can do better. We can do better. Ted Turner created. Thank you, Robin. For you, Robin. Thank you so much. Ted Turner created Captain Planet. You got it. I think I knew this. Ted Turner, Captain Planet. Here's the thing about this, though. Like, it's because people are complex and strange and odd, right? Like, somebody like Ted Turner can simultaneously be like doing all kinds of absurd, ridiculous nonsense while simultaneously being like, no, we need to raise awareness for this, right? Like, that ultimately somebody like Turner, even though he's quite powerful and has a lot of sway, is like something like climate change and environmental issues are like larger even than somebody like Ted Turner. So it is believable for me to think that he could be doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff while simultaneously being like, but we do need to inform people about like environmental issues. I feel like we have to do this. So I'd love to see somebody who went right down the rabbit hole being like, no, Captain Planet was a psyop in order to deflect attention from this over here. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's go, let's do it. But what I generally kind of see is like Ted Turner is just kind of a dude who has a lot of money and wants to use his money to impact the world, as lots of people with lots of money do. And one of the things that he wants to do is create awareness for environmental issues, which during the time weren't so apparent to the populace, right? Like Captain Planet gets created, 1992? Like 1992? Yeah, environmental issues were like not on the docket. So it is believable for me to think that Ted Turner would have done this to try and raise awareness while simultaneously being involved in some of the negative aspects of it. Because people are complex and contradictory all the time, and they do all kinds of stupid stuff. Anyway, but if you can show me something that makes it like, no, Ted Turner got involved with the CIA and they created this psyop in order to deflect attention from the populace, I'll be like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. I'm well on board for that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. I've learned how to entertain that stuff while simultaneously being like, but probably not, right? Like, but probably not. But yeah, it's fun to talk about. I was going to say, I watched The Cap when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. I don't know what The Cap is. Like, what's The Cap? The Cap. Oh, Captain Planet. Yeah, I'm dumb. Look at that, my brain literally just went, The Cap? What could The Cap mean? We're literally talking about Captain Planet. What do you think The Cap means, bud? Oh, he's a Maoist. Oh, okay. Yeah, I find people who yeah, thanks, Barnabas. I find people who narrow their definition. Like, I call myself a communist, but I'm not willing to go like Stalinist, Leninist, Trotskyite, Maoist, like getting into that very narrow kind of definition, right? I find it interesting that people have done that. I find it interesting, but to me, I always look at that and think like, this feels like limiting. Like, it feels like you're putting up barriers to the way that you're thinking or the way that you're communicating that I don't necessarily think need to be there, right? Like, it's wonderful if you say like, I have researched Mao and I find connection with Mao. And what he did in the world and all of this, and so I've like specialized in Maoism, but I find so often that somebody says they're a Maoist, and then that means that they are at odds with like Stalinists or Trotskyites or any of these guys, any of these kind of things, and I just don't like. I don't think I understand that. I don't think I understand why it is that within the rich history of communism, there's like this backbiting kind of fight that's constantly going. Instead, I prefer to just kind of look and say, okay, well, what works and what doesn't, right? Like, what works and what doesn't. And like, guess what? Like, Mao did things that did not work. Like, that's pretty obvious. And so did Stalin, and so did Trotsky, and so did Lenin, and like so did all of them. That you'll never find a leader who didn't do something incorrect, right? Because that's being human, and that's being part of this system of thinking and the system of thought. But so often it feels like when you're having a conversation with it, it's like there's like this checkmate attempt that it's like, and then Mao did that wrong, and so checkmate, and so Maoism itself. And Mao, we can ignore Mao now because of this error. And it's like, I just wish we could be like, no, Mao did that, it was wrong, right? That doesn't discredit Mao, right? Like, I feel the same way when I discuss Hong Kong, that like, China is doing the wrong thing in Hong Kong. Like, it's just, I can say that and I think that's clean. I think it's like a black and white. Like, China is incorrect and what they are doing is wrong in Hong Kong, but I don't think it discredits the whole project. Right? Like, which is what Westerners want it to be. They want it to be like, what they're doing in Hong Kong is wrong, therefore communism is wrong, therefore China is wrong, the whole thing is wrong, capitalism, USA. And I'm like, no, whoa. We don't need to, we don't need to talk that way. Like, that's stupid. Like, these are large, complex societies, right? There are going to be missteps because there are people involved, right? I just wish that we could have that conversation. Anyway, I'm saying all this before even seeing this guy. For all I know, he would think the exact same way that I think on these issues. But for all I know, he's like, Mao was the Maoist, and anyone who isn't Mao is not Mao. I'm like, okay, buddy. Well, we'll see. When will people? But thank you for the link, and I'll gladly going to watch his stuff because I love some of the stuff that's coming out of this out of these feeds. When will people wake up and realize our neo-feudal system, controlled by our sociopath fascists, is no longer sustainable, and that action needs to be taken in the form of general strikes? That's happening, DM. That's happening, right? It is happening. There's it's just not being televised, right? Like the strikes that are going on and the protest movements that are coming, like it is unfolding that way. There are large groups of people who are thinking this way. It's just that the people who are against that, the conservatives, right, the people who want to conserve, the genocidal maniac system that we have, those are the ones that end up on TV. Those are the ones that end up being jammed in our face. Those are the ones that, of course they are, because corporate capitalists want them to be jammed in our face. They're the ones that are going to get blown across the airwaves. Which is why it's so important for each and every one of you to like, share, subscribe, and donate to my Patreon. God, I just feel like a dumbass. I hate capitalism. I hate that there's money. I hate that there's money involved in this. I hate that. But if you do have a buck jangling around in your pocket, my Patreon's in the description. I could use the support. Absolutely, John. That's why I wouldn't call myself anything but a socialist at this time, because it gives me a wiggle room to offer critical support for everything in that area. Well, and like at this stage in the game where capitalism is kind of on the way out, right? Like it's no longer really a valid thought process, right? Especially because it's becoming more and more obvious that the capitalists themselves don't really understand their own system, right? They don't really get how their own system works. And when you actually start talking to capitalists about how their capitalist system works, like, they get really denial-y about it. They get really weird about, like, no, our system is completely voluntary. And you're like, are you fucking joking? Like, you think that this system is voluntary? Yikes, buddy, yikes. The best policy is the most pragmatic policy. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. I'm a Marxist-Leninist. Yeah. Anything else, I'm an ally. Yeah, and I just think it's got to be that way, right? Like, I don't know why we would ever want to fight one another. Like, if we're calling ourselves leftists, communists, socialists, Marxists, Leninists, any of this, Maoists, we got to be on the same side with one another. Like, we got to. Because there's a monster in the room. Right? Because there's a monster in the room. And the monster would love it if we fought ourselves, because then that means it doesn't need to fight us. And the truth is that when we ally with one another and actually turn to fight the monster, we realize the monster is really sad and pathetic. Yeah, but of course anarchists can be trouble sometimes. That's their whole shtick. My thing with the anarchists is very cleanly... I find that anarchists generally speak in large theory, right? That they have big, large theories. They're just like, we got to take down this hierarchy, right? And I'm like, okay, how? And that's where anarchists kind of just dissolve, right? They just kind of like dissipate into nothing. They don't... I mean, and I will gladly be corrected when I say this, like gladly. So if you're an anarchist and you're listening to this, please feel free to direct me to information. Please feel free to correct me on this. But I just find that when it comes time to the pragmatic reality of actually enacting our vision of how the world should look, anarchists just kind of leave the room. They just kind of don't have much to say, you know? Like, and and at this stage, it's like, no, we need pragmatic solutions, right? But I do love the phrase that anarchists can be trouble sometimes, because it's like, that's their shtick, isn't it? That's their whole shtick. Let's see if anything's come up on Al Jazeera yet about this. Here you go. Al Jazeera is always going to have the best story on this, man. Israel launches air raids on Gaza over incendiary balloons. The Israeli Air Force launched air raids on Gaza Strip. In the besieged enclave, sent incendiary balloons. It attacked Hamas compounds. I just, don't believe them. Do you know what I mean? I just don't believe them. I don't believe. The air raids marked the first major flare-up between Israel and Gaza since a ceasefire on May 21st ended Israel's 11-day assault, which killed 256 Palestinians. I just don't believe them. They're yeah, there were these incendiary balloons. I'm probably not, right? Just probably not. They probably just bombed it because they were just Hundreds of Jewish ultra-nationalists participating in the march were heard chanting death to Arabs in Hebrew. In another anti-Palestinian chant, they yelled, "May your village burn." Yeah. It's super fucked, Robin. It's super fucked. I bring 4 water bottles. They use 2 out of 4 and only bring 1 to spare. Bring your own water. Don't bring 1 bottle just because I'm losing 2. How liberal. That sounds like a very personal anecdote, Barnabas. I don't know that I could speak to it. Yeah. What's happening in Israel right now is so super fucked up. Yeah, it's straight up Christopher Columbus shit. Yeah, and it's happening right in front of us. And I remember growing up, people would always there would always be this kind of conversation of it's what do you think you would do during Nazi Germany? What do you think you would be doing during Nazi Germany? Well, you know exactly what you would be doing during Nazi Germany. You know, because it's here. You're aware, because what you're doing now is what you would be doing then. And so if you're sitting there being we need to pay attention to our government and these black guys that are getting shot in the street, if only they had followed the rules, right? That's same shit. Yeah, protect Western culture. Yeah. This economy is going to come roaring back, especially when no one has any money to spend. Because we all know that, the strongest economies are the one where everybody has no money, right? Socialism with Chinese Characteristics, A Guide for Foreigners. This is actually a really great book. There's a fellow, Bay Area 415 on YouTube. He really does a good breakdown of this. And he's pretty, waves the Chinese flag, but, he does really good work. So I always suggest him, Bay Area 415. Is cultural appropriation to name my son Chiang Kai-shek if I'm not Chinese? I'm a white American who admires Chiang. Yeah, your son will hate you, bud. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Hey kids, have you heard about the sickle with the 4? Dialectics paves it over. I don't know anything about this. Anybody know anything about this symbol? I don't know anything about this symbol. It's the Soviet hammer and sickle, but I don't understand the 4. Love how the government think that young people become anti-capitalist because of teachers, the curriculum, and not because we can't afford to buy a house. We're competing with 200 people for a job at Tesco, and we have increasing access to info that shows us what the rich actually do. Yeah, she's just nailing it. I'm going to save this one. I'm going to save that one. That's a good one. Trotsky? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, near as I can tell, Trotsky was just kind of a mad genius who was his own worst enemy. If he and Stalin had just buried the hatchet, I think the communist movement and the Soviet movement would have been stronger. And this is why I continuously say, it's always humans, right? It's just humans being humans. And we try to elevate these people to superhero level, but it's that's not real. These are just people being people doing their best, and the relationship between Trotsky and Stalin really, really shows that. It's a very revealing relationship in regards to the humanity of these people, because they are ostensibly allies. They're both working towards similar goals. They're both interested in improving the quality of life for their own people, right? Everybody's trying to make it happen. They just didn't like each other. and they didn't like each other because Trotsky's kind of like a hyper-intellectual mad genius, right? And Stalin was a gunslinger, right? And like, so Trotsky thought that Stalin was stupid, and Stalin thought that Trotsky was arrogant. And guess what? They were both probably right to a degree, right? Like, Stalin wasn't stupid. Like, he's not like the dumbest person in the room, but he wasn't as smart as Trotsky or Lenin, right? Like, he wasn't as smart as those guys. But like, if they had just looked at one another and been like, oh, okay, so like, you're a smart guy who has a lot to offer, right, to what this movement is doing. And if Trotsky had looked at Stalin and been like, you're a wonderful organizer and people really like you, we should do everything we can to like bury the hatchet. We could even admit that we just don't like each other and then just like move on from there, right? You can work with people you don't like, especially if you're like leading a country, right? Like, you can work with people you don't like. And I hope out there in the universe somewhere there is an alternate reality where Trotsky and Stalin were able to bury the hatchet and able to actually move forward and work together without their dumb shit getting in each other's ways. You should solve the Mideast peace because you're 100% right on Papa Stalin and Trotsky. You know what, bud? Here's my position on Mideastern peace. The U.S. needs to leave, and then white people need to no longer be involved. That's it. Like, white people just like literally need to look at this region and go, that's going to do what it's going to do, and we need to just not even be involved in it. Because, like, we've been messing with that region for hundreds of years. Like, hundreds of years, but like, since the fall of the Ottoman Empire onward, it's just been an imperialist project. It's just been like this neo-colonial project where like we've created like military bases throughout the entire region just to steal their resources. Like, we don't give a fuck about their culture, their lives, or any of that kind of stuff. And honestly, like, white people just need to leave. And any conflict that they have internally with one another, we just need to be like, yep, that's just people working stuff out. That's it. It's just people working stuff out. And I hope they do it. I hope they work it out. I hope they make it happen. And while they're working it out, I hope that we come over back to our lands and we work it out. Right? Because that's what everybody's doing. That's what everybody's doing. We're just trying to work it out. I just wish that we'd stop doing it with bombs. Canada is delivering 6 million vaccines to Ontario over the next 3 weeks. Fantastic. Ruth, if you're still in the chat, I hope you're going to get your vaccine. The scam that revealed chaos and culture of fraud at Queen's Park. Oh yeah, this story. Yeah, there's just like a guy who commits fraud. If you're going to commit a crime in your workplace, fraud is the one to commit. Because it's so easy to get away with, and then even if you do get caught, the punishment is so minor, and then they usually can't uncover the depth of your fraud, and so you usually do end up walking away with the bulk of your theft. So if you're going to commit a crime, do fraud. Imagine spending all that time and agreeing on nothing except China bad. Yeah, exactly. B3W. What does that even entail? What does that entail, G7? You got me. None of our plans made sense. Yeah, the G7, what a waste of time, man. Like, literally just, like, white people getting into a room laughing with one another, being like, yeah, we care. Oh, just like a bunch of delusional drunks. Like, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. Yeah, this keeps popping up, because I think it's just so hysterically, like, China's dismantling of CIA spy ring highlights growing dystopian-like surveillance state. Like, it's so contradictory. It's so just like, like the level of self-delusion, the lack of self-awareness to write this headline, right? China's dismantling of CIA spy ring highlights growing dystopian-like surveillance state. Like, it's incoherent. The Chinese are getting rid of the CIA, so they're the dystopian ones. What? Colombia, ex-president asks for forgiveness over random army killings in exchange for bonuses. Oh yeah, that's a creepy headline. The U.S. is offering financial enticements to countries willing to shun Chinese Huawei ZTE gear and a change in tactics from threatening to incentivizing. Well, this is the problem with what the U.S. has been doing this whole time, is that they've literally just been going around bombing everybody, right? They've just been going around destroying everything. And so the entire rest of the world is basically sick of their shit, right? So the U.S. turning around and going like, oh, can you do what we want? We'll super buddy with you. We'll be super helpful. Like, I see huge sections of the world just being like, no, fucking psycho, get out of here, right? Like, especially when they've got like a country like China, which has not bombed them and which has not destroyed them, doing exactly that with like incentivization structures and being like, hey, if you work with us, we'll give you this, right? If you work with us, we'll help you out this way. If you work with us, we can float you a loan that has like low interest rates and we can negotiate on the nature of these loans and this kind of stuff. Whereas the U.S. is basically like holding a bomb over your country and then being like, work with us or we drop this bomb. Like, no, fuck you. Like, fuck you, go away. No, thank you. Mom, can you give me Pulitzer Prize to act as the watchdogs of corruption and expose the truth? Yes. Actually, like a boss, inventing... I can't read this. Inventing reality. This meme is just friggin' Gen Z. Friggin' Gen Z! Kids! Am I the one that's out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong. I am sure that there is some 16-year-old kids somewhere who are looking at this just going like, ha 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 ha, and I'm just like, what could I mean, there's lots of cool stuff here. Like, if you don't know Michael Parenti is like, he is the bomb. Like he was doing lots of great stuff through the late 80s and early 90s, even as back as the 70s, and a lot of his stuff has finally made it onto YouTube. Yeah. And like the darker myths of empire, there are no poor countries. Like he now of course he's like very old, so he can't really be going around any longer. But like Michael Parenti, the darker myths of empire, really worth listening to, really really worth paying attention to, because like he essentially like dismantles the myths of empire completely. And this statement, there are no poor countries, is like a Michael Parentianism, where like we say that like, oh, these countries are so poor, and Michael Parenti's statement is like, no, those countries are rich, right? They're just overexploited. That's it. Like they've got wealth, they've got all these resources, they've got all this stuff. It's just that we exploit them and we go in and bomb them and we steal their resources because guess what? They've got lots of resources. So like, if we just let these countries alone and allowed them to negotiate their own country, then they would attain similar levels of quality of life that we claim to have. We have decided, this is from the Atlantic Council, we have decided that a cyber attack can trigger Article 5. It doesn't matter if an attack is kinetic or cyber, we will assess as allies when it meets the threshold, and it sends a message that we are cyber allies. I mean, NATO justifying its existence by making hacks into acts of war. Yeah. Like, trade wars are war. Like, sanctions are war, right? Like, you are attacking the populace directly and reducing the quality of their life in the hope that they will rise up against their own leadership and overthrow them, or it'll force the leadership to take a knee itself. So I'm not surprised to see like NATO making these sorts of statements, because like NATO is always looking for how to get into the next war, right? They're always looking for that kind of thing, because their interest is in Europe and North America, right? Like, they think they own the world, and if it turns out that they don't, then they'll just bomb somebody. Now we understand that it's the people who want change. Yeah. And I mean, if I was living in South America, dude, like here I am doing this YouTube thing here in Canada where things are still like relatively stable and things are still relatively good. But like, I'm living in South America. Oh boy, there's like real shit going on. The stuff that's going on in Colombia especially should terrify us, right? It should absolutely terrify us. Because let's say we actually manage to create like enough of a revolutionary force in order to push back against these neo-fascist, neoliberals. Well, they're just going to do what they do in Colombia. They're just going to start kidnapping people. They're just going to start kidnapping people and murdering them in the streets, right? Like, that's coming to America, man. Like, that's coming to America for sure. Yeah. Achievements of CPC-led China show advantages of socialism, Russian communist leader says. Who is this? Gennady Zyuganov? I believe that he's like the leftist voice in Russia. And of course, people like this get arrested in Russia, right? Like, you do jail time in Russia if you're a leftist. Booking second dose be like, sorry, this appointment selected is no longer available. Oh, yeah. I am so just not getting my shit together on these vaccines. I'm, like, so not getting my shit together. I finally got, like, my health card. Because, like, I moved from New Brunswick to Toronto and then just, like, didn't get my health card switched over because I'm like, I'll just do it when I'm around. So I put it off. Pandemic hit, didn't want to go outside, so didn't want to do that. And now finally things have like calmed down, and I'm like finally like, okay, I've got my health card now. I did it, got my health card, and now I just need to like book to get this thing done. And I'm just like not getting my shit together. If Jeff was in the chat, he would admonish me for such a thing. I owe the Jurassic Park franchise an apology. It is, in fact, very realistic the rich would reopen a park in spite of it consistently resulting in mass death. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I don't think we're going to get any more Israel news. I think like this is probably the thing that they launched this air raid, bombed the one place, and that's probably going to be it for a little while. But like, because they launched some I bet you they're going to find out that those incendiary balloons was like literally like a little girl holding a balloon and it like let go, and they're like, oh no, balloon. Yeah, Zen's getting increasingly desperate in the light of the 2020 census. Yet the Uyghur population rose by 1.6 million, an increase of 16.26 percentage points higher than the national ethnic minority average. Right? Like, real genocide, real Uyghur genocide going on, right? Because Lord knows, like, when we were enacting a genocide against the First Nations people, yeah, their population increased, right? That's what happens during genocides, right? The population goes up, right? Can you imagine if an Arab organization made a watch list of Jewish student activists? Why the fuck does Canary Mission get away with it? Because they're CIA, right? Bloc Québécois doubles down on motion of Quebec nationhood, constitutional change. Well, here we go. Separatists. Quebec's going to separate you guys. Quebec's going to separate anytime now. This sort of stuff is actually quite clever from the Bloc Québécois because they actually have a great deal of power right now in Quebec and in the House. Because when you have a minority government, as we do, it means that the Liberals can work with anyone in order to get legislation passed, and that includes the Bloc Québécois. And so if the Liberals are having difficulty finding allies to get something passed, they can go to the Bloc Québécois, and the Bloc Québécois will say, like, well, if you add this amendment to it, which is like something like increased spending in Quebec schools or something like this, then sure, we'll do it. And the Bloc is like, they're doing like separatist movement right, which is like, we'll threaten this separatism thing, but we'll step down from it if you give us something, right? So they're always like using it as a negotiating chip, which I think is very clever, very, very clever of them, and seems very built into the way that they negotiate with the rest of Canada, because they just want everything to be better for their own citizens. I mean, I can respect that, right? It's tough not to, but should this whole thing fall apart, the first place to go is going to be Quebec for sure. Oh, Daniel Dumbrill. Daniel Dumbrill, if you're looking for a guy who's really, really good on Chinese news, really good for like reporting about what's going on in China, this guy right here, Daniel Dumbrill, really, really strong. Dr. Abdu Sharkawe say he's overjoyed as his hospital's COVID-19 unit closes. Wow. So, we're getting ready. We're getting ready for it. We could be looking as early as September. People could be declaring this thing over, right? That'd be a big deal. I'd say let them go, but make sure they pay their rent for all Canadian properties and forget money from Canada. Then it will be Alberta. Well, and honestly, I just don't think that Quebec ever will go, because like, Canada's federated body is not yet as corrupt as the United States, and it still is working for the benefit of the provinces generally. And I just think that if Quebec separates, like, it's going to be they're going to be worse off, right? They're just going to be worse off. And if Alberta separates, if Alberta were to separate, it would be the end of like civil society in Alberta. Like, all they have going for them is the tar sands. And the tar sands is like precipitous. It's not good oil. When oil prices drop, as they are wont to do from time to time, the first oil that gets stranded is tar sands oil. So like, Alberta's industry will just like Alberta's been on this oil high for several decades, but when that dries up, like, what are they? They're just like ranchers. They got ranchers and lumber, right? Like, and so yeah, Alberta would quickly become another U.S. state, and like, this all depends, man. Like, like there's so many question marks right now about what could happen. Like, so for example, like, a big question mark that's going on right now is, will this legislation that the Liberals are steadily moving through for a basic income, will it pass? Right? It's in its second reading now, and it looks very positive, right? Everybody is speaking very well of it, and there's a lot of support. And the people who are speaking out, there's nobody speaking out against it. Everybody's just like, okay, well, let's talk about implementation. Like, what does this actually look like? And so there's a lot of positivity surrounding that particular policy. I still think it's just the Liberals bullshitting us. I still think that the Liberals are just putting it forward right now because there's an election coming, and then right after the election they'll get rid of the legislation, because that's what Liberals do and that's how Liberals operate. And then on top of that, they'll like pass the legislation, but the legislation will be like, oh, let's find 500 people in the Northwest Territories, in the Yukon, and in Nunavut, and give them money and see what happens. So they'll just like launch another pilot project. It should take 4 years, and so they can like waylay the project for another 4 years. Like, that's how the Liberals will put this forward, right? While simultaneously cutting all our services and cutting all our supports, so that, you know, the capitalists will abandon us and we'll be forced to live on the streets. Like, that's how the Liberals want this to go, like, pretty obviously. If they didn't, they'd actually pass a basic income. But we'll see. So, but let's be positive for a second. Let's live in this delusional optimism, and say they do pass a basic income, right? So suddenly the populace has spending money. Suddenly the populace has the ability to actually pay its bills. Suddenly there's more stability, right? And it's based on this federated idea of being part of Canada. Well, it's very unlikely that citizens will vote to leave a country that's offering them those kinds of benefits. Whereas you go down to the United States, where they're literally abandoning their citizens. Like, I don't know what else to call it anymore. Like, the federated body of like the United States of America is just in full abandonment mode. I can't, like, what else do you call it? I just don't even know what to call it. And lots of places are just suddenly, and it's going to get more obvious as the Democrats get more power. Because the Democrats are just going to have all the power they need. Like, right now, they've got Joe Manchin as their scapegoat. They're like, oh, we can't get anything done because we have one Democrat holding everything up. Oh, certainly they're not, like, going behind the scenes and being like, okay, Joe, you're the obstructionist. You're going to have to take it on the chin, okay, Joe? And Joe's being like, yep, I'll take it for on the chin, right? But that means I get to sit on the board of directors of Exxon or something, right? And they're like, yep, absolutely, Joe. We'll make that happen for you. And then they leave the hall, the behind the scenes, and they go out there and they're like, Joe Manchin! Oh, he's just not, And Joe Manchin is being like, I just don't think it'll be good for Americans, right? And it's all like WWE posturing. But then eventually, like, in this next election, it's likely that the Senate will continue swinging towards the Democrats. And what are the Democrats going to do? They're going to have more obstructionists, right? Oh, suddenly these people are all obstructionists suddenly. Yeah, that's legitimate and real. And so it's just going to get more and more obvious that, like, the federated body of the United States is just abandoning everybody. And places like California and Texas are just eventually going to be like, why are we paying taxes to these lunatics? Fuck that. We vote to separate. And once that starts happening, it's just gonna yeah. Alberta is kind of like having a teenager in the house, eh? Like, it's just, anyway. When the rent moratorium's up, it's gonna get ugly. Most people, and haven't been working. Exactly, Wigwith. Exactly. And the strategy from the Liberals seems to be to trickle it out, right? They don't want to, like, cut it and have, 100,000 people dump out onto the streets. They want to, like, trickle it out so that, like, every month it's, like, 1,000 people. So that, like, we can invisibilize them. And then we'll scratch our heads and be like, where'd all these tents come from? What's with the tent cities? I don't understand. Right? And, like, and of course, if you want to put it in dystopian terms in regards to the basic income, like, we have massive high-scale corporations buying up our housing. Well, that means that the basic income basically just becomes a subsidy for landlords, right? Which is why I ultimately say we need to get rid of landlords, because, like, they're just parasites. They don't do anything. Well, that poor man's protest is growing a lot in Virginia. D.C., now Maryland and Ohio say they would join. Oh, really? Is it called poor man's protest? Ruth? Oh, the Poor People's Campaign. Yes, the Poor People's Campaign is making a big gains, and is even starting to make actual corporate headlines. One of the interesting things that is starting to happen, I think, in, like, corporate power is that they're trying to maintain their power, but they're recognizing that they can't just ignore this shit, right? Because that's how they become irrelevant. Right? If they just ignore what's actually happening, and like YouTube people are the people who are the ones talking about it, then they know they become irrelevant. They know that they just stop. And like this is definitely something to pay attention to. Definitely something to pay attention to. Like, what do they got going on here? Is this... So they've got like a bunch of committees. I think I've played some videos from this organization, right? So these people are getting organized. They are getting right. I love this sign: "Fight poverty, not the poor." Exactly. And like, yeah, like, something must be done. Like, we can't just stand by and accept our abandonment, right? You guys have said a lot all of a sudden. California separating will be interesting because Silicon Valley, Mexico, and the rising costs are all there. Well, but the thing is that rising coast. Yeah. Yeah. Climate change, like the coastal places, like, I don't understand why. I guess I do understand, like, it makes sense that it's the coasts that largely vote Democrat, right? Because they're like, we're the ones that are going to eat the rising waters, that we're already eating the rising waters from climate change, right? That the waters have already raised like 8 inches since they started this whole, like, since 2000, right? Inconvenient Truth comes out about 2000, right? And they're like, yeah, rising waters. We need to actually, like, deal with this. Like, all the trajectories, Florida especially, like, Florida is all low land, right? And so if this goes up like a foot, all of this is underwater, right? Like, Orlando just ceases to exist. Like, not Orlando, sorry, Florida. Just, like, ceases to exist, really. And it'll just, like, become a place where it's like, it might as well just become part of Georgia. So, yeah, major concerns there. Major concerns. Oh, well, and Wigwith, in the States, it's way worse, right? Like, Canada has its own crisis. Well, and what's amazing about what's happening, like, so I talked about what's happening in Canada and, like, how they're trying to trickle out and obfuscate and, like, try and steady, slow, do all that kind of stuff. In America, it literally is just like, oh, well, they're fucked. Off they go, right? Mr. Biden, 100,000 people are homeless this month. What do you have to say? Well, I say good luck to those people. God bless America. We're working as hard as we can to help them. If only Joe Manchin. And a bunch of gullible Americans will just be like, Joe Manchin's the problem, right? It's their strategy. It's what the Democrats are doing, so that they can say, oh, yeah, we'd help you, but, you know, it's those Republicans, the obstructionist Republicans. Oh, yeah, they're the problem. We would help you. We would help you, but it's the obstructionist Republicans. And then they finally get enough power in the House and the Senate to actually do something. But there's one guy, Joe Manchin, that's standing in the way. Well, that's a problem. It's a Joe Manchin. It's obstructionist, right? Like, it's the same exact narrative. They've just, like, funneled all of it into that one individual person. And should America suddenly, like, should they get, like, 55 seats in the Senate, let's say, suddenly you'll find that instead of having one obstructionist, they've got 6, right? I don't know where, these obstructionists, right? And it's just like how it's going to go in America, because they can't actually do anything. They can't actually help people, because, as everybody knows, corporations are gods. That the invisible hand decided that they get all the money, so that means that they're good. And if you're poor and homeless on the street, it means that you're evil. Everybody knows this, right? That's just normal, rational way of thinking, right? Certainly isn't psychotic to think that. Certainly isn't like a strategy of total abandonment and arrogance. It certainly isn't something that's being put forward by pedophiles to maintain their prestige and power so they can keep going to Jeffrey Epstein's island and rape young girls, right? Certainly can't be that, right? No, it's got to be that poor people are actually evil, right? If California, if nobody buys their product, they go broke. If California, Portland, Washington, and Vancouver got together, they could do something. Yeah, I've heard that before, where it's like the East Coast Alliance, West Coast Alliance. And like, and you're really hitting it on the head here, Ruth. If nobody buys their products, they go broke. Like, the whole system fails if nobody has any money, right? We're going to reopen the economy and everything will come roaring on back and everything will be great. Oh, nobody has any money, so the economy can't work. Because all of our economists are illiterate and don't actually know anything about how economics works. What blew me away when I started to study economics and I started to I listened to Harvard and Oxford and Berkeley and all these guys, is that none of them actually defined what an economy was. Right? None of them actually talked about how an economy is structured. None of them actually talked about the cyclical nature of how an economy works. How the government prints money, it distributes that money into its places. People get it through jobs, right? And then everybody pays taxes back to the government, and then the government redistributes wealth, right? That's how an economy actually works. It flows cyclically, right? And so And it's become like really obvious that these guys are just fucking illiterate. That all you got to do is literally talk like basic Marx to them, and they just don't know what you're talking about. They immediately go into ad hoc attacks because they're illiterate. They don't know anything, and so it's hardly surprising at all that we are having like major economic collapses because the people who are supposedly the most well-educated people literally do not know how an economy works. Like, it's pretty stunning, actually. Lake Mead is at its lowest ever. Hoover Dam can't produce enough energy. California is going to start water wars. Yeah, I've been hearing that. Name last. Canadian politicians somehow seem to skirt most of the criticism. Oh, I totally completely forgot to say hi to you, Jeff. How you doing, bud? I was actually just talking about you. You had mentioned something to me. When is that protest? It's in 2 days, right? The 17th? Is that right? Tell people about that protest, okay? It's amazing that the real estate economy has not factored that into value yet. Chocolate ice cream is good. Chocolate ice cream is good. You know what, bud? You and I think we'll get along really well if you're going to say stuff like that. Now, I'm going to go get some chocolate ice cream after this. You've convinced me. Actually, Biden will spew a bunch of psychopathic pseudo-woke platitudes about how he understands their struggle. Yeah, it worked for Clinton, right? That feel your pain, like, I feel your pain, well, kind of while he was dismantling the welfare system. Like, yeah, the Democrats, like, they know that these people have nowhere else to go. That's really what it comes down to, is that because the system in the United States is designed to be a two-party system, and the Republicans have collapsed into overt, open Christian fascism, the Democrats are very aware that you don't have anybody else to vote for. Who are you going to vote for? And Biden was literally saying this. Like, people would come up and they would start complaining to him about something, and he would say to them, well, vote for Trump then. Like, they know that people have nowhere else to go, and so they know they don't have to do anything. Because what are you going to do? You're going to vote for Trump? And, like, their system doesn't work. Like, it's pretty clear. And just to maintain their own sense of moral sentimentality, right? They do this, like, oh, yeah, I feel you, right? They don't give a fuck. Canadian politicians somehow seem to skirt most of the criticism. Apart from some right-wing blogs and YouTubers. Well, you got to remember, right? Like, the corporations own the politicians, right? So, and then they also own the media. So critiquing the politicians while the politicians are doing what the corporations want with the system that they own is self-defeating. Why would they do that, right? Like, anytime the media outlets in Canada actually get to critiquing politicians, it's because the politician has done something that is impossible to ignore, right? That if the media was to ignore it, that would further reduce the credibility of the media outlet. So the only time, like, this is what's funny about Canadian corporate media, which is Canadian media, is, and the United States media, but is that the only time they actually will report on something is when everybody already knows the story, right? Like, oh, everybody already knows that this is happening. We can't ignore it, so let's report on the story that everybody already knows, right? That's how it works. And so, it's being used as a form of control. It's being used as a form of to control dissent, right? So, like, if Doug Ford does something like this notwithstanding clause, right? Well, you've got to report on that because it's so overt and obvious and in your face. Like, it's like overtly anti-democratic. It's overtly against the principles of our charter and our constitution, right? It's overtly, so you've got to report on it. But like, corporate media, they'll like report on it, being like, yep, he passed a notwithstanding clause anyway, and they'll move on, leaving it to independent commentators to be like, hey, isn't this fucking fascism? Isn't this bullshit? This all seems to be just building up to bring on Trump term 2.1, That's the threat, Wigwith. That's the threat. And Trump can win. Like, Trump can win, right? Especially with these Democrats acting this way. I do think that, like, the American populace wants to go further Democrat. I think they will. And they want to do it based on one very simple principle, which is there should be an investigation into the January 6th insurrection, right? And people are outraged that there is not an actual investigation happening into that, and the Republicans themselves are the ones that have taken the blame for that, rightly, to large degrees. And so I think you're going to see in these midterm elections a lot of typically right-wing people voting Democrat just to give the Democrats the power to be able to get this investigation going. And that's when you're really going to see. That's when you're really going to see the Democrats' high level of bullshit. Because the Democrats don't want to help anybody. That's not what they're interested in. They're sociopaths, right? They work for sociopaths. They're enthralled by sociopaths. So they're not going to do anything. And they're certainly not going to do anything to potentially indict their political and corporate allies, right? Which an investigation into that event would probably uncover, honestly. And so it's just not going to happen. And then once it becomes obvious that the Democrats are not going to actually do anything, that's when somebody like Donald Trump is going to show up again. And you know what Donald Trump is going to say? Donald Trump's going to show up again, and he's going to say, what'd I tell you? What did I tell you about these Democrats? What'd I tell you? They had 4 years. What did they do? Nothing. Vote me. That's what he's going to say. And he's going to be right. It's going to be 4 years of absolute inaction and totally nothing from these Democrats. Just obstructionist politics. Except this time, instead of it being obstructionist politics from two different political bodies that seem to be fighting with one another, instead of that, it's literally going to be one party, the Democratic Party, obstructioning itself. And so what's going to happen? He's going to show up. He's going to be like, things were so much better when I was the president. I understand why you wanted to try Joe Biden, but he hasn't done anything. He's done nothing whatsoever. You should go for us again because at least things were happening. We'll get America back on track. Things will be great. We'll greatest country ever. Trump 2024. Trump 2024. And it'll happen. Economists need to learn basic math. Yeah, July 17th. So it's July 17th, 220 Young. It's a anti-poverty rally done by Poof. Is that correct? Neoliberalism is quite simply a scam perpetrated by the very wealthy, and they are the ones funding most of the political campaigns on both sides to ensure nothing actually gets changed. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure you said this in context, Robin, and it made sense, but look fat. Are you saying that I'm fat, Robin? Is that what you're saying? Oh! Democrats have cognitive dissonance problem. The Republicans at least admit their selfish desires. I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance, but it definitely is like the Republicans are very straightforward. I think you're actually hitting something really interesting here, Name Last, is like the Republicans will just be like, no, those people are poor, they should be abandoned. Fuck them. They should get a better job, right? And it's very straightforward, and it's like a no bullshit. It's delusional, and it's psychotic, but at least they're honest about how delusional and psychotic they are. Whereas the Democrats are like, oh, no, we're here to help you, and if you vote for us, we'll actually, we see what's going on, and oh, yeah, that's a real problem, we're definitely going to help you, and then fucking totally abandon you. So they're lying about their psychoticness, right? So while the Republicans are being honest about it, the Democrats are lying about it, which is worse, in my view. Did you know Kamala kept people in prison so they could fight fires around rich people's homes in California? Yeah, I knew all about that. Yeah. Kamala. Yeah. No, of course. Like, a vice president cop does shitty things? How surprising. Manufacturing consent. It makes no sense. I mean, the world makes no sense. Any story that indicts both parties is dropped like a hot potato. Yeah, exactly. You read any Mark Fisher? Mark Fisher. You are the second person who has told me about Mark Fisher. I'm going to keep this open, and I'm going to look on YouTube, see if he's got any capitalist realism. Maybe I can find like an audiobook or something of this. Because you're the second person to recommend this guy to me in the last couple of days. So I'm going to take that as a sign from the universe. Why has nothing been done about June 6th, even more than COVID at this point? Yeah, and people are mad about it, Ruth, and they should be. They should be. Like, the fact that there can't be an investigation about a literal insurrection that occurred at the White House? Nah. Well, not at the White House, sorry, at the... Anyway. If they wanted to charge Trump, they would have already. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But, like, you can't start doing that. If you start indicting politicians, right, then politicians are going to realize that they have to actually adhere to a code of conduct, right? Whereas the corporate state doesn't want them to adhere to a code of conduct. The corporate state wants them to do what they're told, right? And if they actually start getting punished for working for these corporations, for doing what they're told, well, then they'll be less incentivized to do it. So you can't actually start charging them with this stuff. It reduces the power of the billionaire class. Yeah, it was you, was it, Onward? Very nice. I'll take a look tonight. I'll take a look. Yeah, protest is called enough. Yeah, enough with this bullshit, right? And what's so frustrating about the poverty question? Stuff like a basic income, stuff like just housing these people, just housing the homeless. It's cheaper. It's cheaper than just letting them live on the streets. It's cheaper. And we're so like ideologically deluded and ideologically driven that, hold on, little spider just got on my keyboard. But we're so it's obviously an ideology, right? And you get talking with conservative types, and I've talked to conservative types, and I straight out say to them, like, no, it's cheaper, right? It's just cheaper. And then suddenly the whole fiscal conservative side of the conversation ends, and it becomes completely ideology, right? And I've just started saying to these guys, like, you don't read your Bible, do you? Like, these people go to church, they're good Christians, and I'm like, wow, you just don't read your Bible. So, like, those are my two slogan statements, because that's how people think. They think in slogans, right? And once you get a slogan embedded in somebody's head, then it starts to actually kind of act as an infectionary sort of force. And then they start saying the slogan to other people because they wonder if their friends and family can defeat the slogan. And eventually it like infects and creates like a big thing. These are my two slogans. It's cheaper, because it is. It's just cheaper to give people houses. It's just cheaper to give people a basic income. It's just cheaper. So if their only thing is fiscal conservatism, well, it's cheaper. You're done. Two words. It's cheaper. Story's over, right? And they can disbelieve it all they want, but they're wrong. They're hyper wrong. We have all the studies. We have all the information. It's cheaper. So unless they're going to, retreat into the delusional fairy tale land that they live in, they've got to be confronted with that. And then when they fall into the ideology, you're just like, didn't Christ say something about this? Didn't Christ say something about giving money to the poor? And that's it. Like, read your Bible. There's your slogan. Read your Bible. They want the threat of Trump out there so people will cling to them for protection. Oh yeah, that's an interesting viewpoint. Well, I do think that Trump, like, and it's the same thing with this, why am I forgetting his name? Manchin thing, right? Is that instead of people looking at the system and seeing the systemic problem, they can focus in on scapegoats. And that's essentially what happened to Trump in the last election, is that he was just scapegoated, right? And the same thing is happening to Joe Manchin. They're just scapegoating him. Yeah, that's exactly like the Canadian cousins. Cons are libs are liars that pretend to care. Yep, that's precise. That's precisely accurate. Plastic Pills podcast dives into that field of philosophy. Okay, cool. I'm always looking for good. I'm always looking for good new podcasts because I'm kind of getting tired of the Chapo boys. I got to be honest. Like I love them, but I am kind of getting tired of them. And I tried to go back to Joe Rogan recently, and don't get me wrong. Like Joe has some interesting people on, but I don't know. I'm so tired of his kind of like bro dude persona. I shouldn't say persona. It's who he is, but like. Unrelatedly, 6th of June was the 77th anniversary of the D-Day invasion and opening of the Western Front. Well, that's kind of ominous, don't you feel? Don't you feel like that kind of implies that June 6th also had this kind of like opening and like it created like a new sort of front of an unfolding and ongoing war? Oh, that feels very ominous. Mark, I always love you being in the chat, man. You always come up with this kind of stuff. You always have like really precise and interesting kind of trivia. Like, I really, really value that. That's so nice. It's so nice that you're here doing that. Right-wingers should have taken some heads at the Capitol. I mean, they did kill a cop. Like, they killed people. People died. And they were trying. Like, there were shots fired. And what's insane is that we have, like, footage of Republican congresspeople and senators like barricading doors and holding pistols. There's one, I can't remember his name offhand, but there was a congressman who literally shot. He shot at these guys and then later just denied that the incident occurred. He just was like, no, that was like a minor scuffle. Everything's fine. Then compared to the price if they end up in prison, just house. Yeah, exactly. It's cheaper. Just house them. Just house these guys. It's going to get up to 48 Celsius in the Southwest this week. Ugh, and half the country's on fire all summer, and each summer is hotter than the last. Yeah. I wish I had saved it. I stupidly just kind of moved by it, but I saw this like drought in the United States year over year, and they actually were going month by month. And it's just like huge section of the United States falling into drought. And then, like, of course, over the winter, there's no drought. But then, like, over here now, huge drought. And every time the drought is bigger and deeper. And it's just, like, it is getting worse. It's observable. It's observable. Like, at this stage in the game, these guys that are standing around being like, oh, yeah, we're just going to adapt. I'm like, all it's going to take is a drought to hit the United States all at once, right? Like, so you have, like, the Southwest happening. And so, okay, well, the rest of the country can kind of withstand that and, like, you know, maybe we'll have less almonds this time or something, right? But if it happens all at once, I found out that the homeless man who was part of the Invisible Heart documentary, who was touted as a success story, was evicted. So for those of you guys who don't know, there's a documentary called Invisible Heart, and it's attempting to document the rise of, I forget what they're called, social impact bonds, which are literally just like the privatization of social care, right? It instead of just taxing wealthy people and then using those taxes to do stuff, instead it turns those initiatives into investments by the wealthy, right? And of course they fail, and of course they're completely fascist, and they're more expensive, and they're terrible, and they shouldn't be done. But, so this documentary, Invisible Heart, really did I actually thought they did a pretty bad job, honestly. Like, the further I get away from this documentary, Invisible Heart, the more I see, like, they really tried to do that, like, objective journalism, where they were like, oh no, both sides. When it's not a both sides issue, right? It's literally sociopathic billionaires and millionaires attempting to turn our social safety nets into investment hedge funds for themselves. Like, fuck that. And then, and of course, their like big success story in this documentary was this homeless fellow who, you know, gets housed through one of these initiatives, but now Jeff is telling me that he ends up being evicted. Of course he does, because the documentary's over, right? Because nobody's paying any attention any longer. And so these investors, right, are just like, oh, okay, well, we're not making any money off of keeping this homeless guy housed. He can get evicted, who cares, right? Despicable. Just disgusting. Ugh, that breaks my heart, bud. Man, what a bad news night. This has been a bad news night. The bombing of Gaza. Oh yeah, Jeff, I don't know if you know about this. They're bombing Gaza again. They're launching air raids. Yeah. Because apparently Gaza sent up incendiary balloons, which I almost guarantee is just like some little girl just accidentally releasing a balloon. Because she managed to get a hold of a balloon and just wanted to have like a little bit of fucking joy for 30 seconds in her life. And so she's just like, oh, I love balloons. Balloons are so nice. Oopsie, because she's a little girl. And it flies up. And then they're like, bomb that area! Bomb it! Because they're psychos, right? Yeah, a lot of people aren't even talking about adapting. They're still denying it's happening. That's true, dude. That's what's terrifying. Like, it's scary how many... It's scary that... the leaders of the opposition, the Conservative Party, the leaders of the opposition, still deny that climate change is real. Like, that's scary. That's scary to think about. You know? I'd feel a lot better about what was going on if they had just admitted that climate change is real. Like, that would have been nice. A lot of people, Nestle owns water in the U.S. Yeah, Nestle is evil, dude. Like, if you want to, like, anybody who wants to tell me that corporations are not psychopathic, crazy organizations, take a look at Nestle. Like, just like psychos. I worked with him for 5 years and left the organization because of social impact bonds. Yeah, social impact bonds, man. Like, I hope that they die. I hope that they die, because the more I think about them, the more I'm just like, oh, these are evil. Like, these are evil. Like, and they should be called evil. It's something that, like, no heart would do. Like, from the Care Bears. Like, that's the kind of evil that we're talking about now. Like, we're talking about, like, Skeletor and Darth Vader and No Heart, right? Like cartoonish level of villainy. Like, Jeff Bezos is, like, look at him. He is Lex Luthor, right? That, like, he stands against everything Superman stands for. So just, like, the guy replacing Netanyahu sounds even more crazy. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And he's going to be a way worse statesman. That I think is Netanyahu's greatest strength. Is that Netanyahu is a really good statesman. And what that means, let's be really specific. It means that he had the ability to convince everyone he wasn't a psychopath, right? And so someone like Obama was such a great statesman, even though he extended the wars, even though he bailed out the big banks, even though he completely betrayed any leftist organization that existed, including black people in America. But everybody thinks that Obama is super good because he's an excellent statesman, because he can convince everybody that he's not a fucking psycho. And Netanyahu had that kind of same sort of skill set, where he was able to convince people that he wasn't a psycho. Whereas this new guy, I've watched a couple interviews with him, and I'm looking at a guy who's not really able to keep the mask on, who's not really able to pretend like he's something other than what he is, which is a religious, zealot, insane psychopath. Another nightmarish headline: built-to-rent suburbs are poised to spread across the U.S. Yeah, that's BlackRock. That's BlackRock. We have different organizations that are doing that here in Canada, but BlackRock down in the States is buying up all of the housing because all of the money got stolen from the populace and transferred upwards, and then instead of the money actually trickling down, they're just using it to buy up all the property. Millennials will be in competition with pension funds to buy homes. Yeah, it's no longer a competition. Like, it's over, right? It's over. Like, you're not getting a house. You're not, right? It's just not going to happen. Like, I know people who are trying to get a house right now with, like, their grandparents' hereditary wealth, that their grandparents are, like, super hyper wealthy, and they're thinking about getting a house, and now they're talking like, yeah, we might actually need to, like, we'll get a house, but we'll have to move in with, like, our brother, right, and his wife, and so it'll be actually two families living in one house, right, and that's the way they're talking, and it's only happening because they have this, like, hereditary wealth that's available to them. So if you're just like doctor, lawyer, engineer, too bad. Houseboats are on the rise. Yeah, and you'll see more tent cities. You'll see more trailer parks. You'll see more squatting, more squatters happening. Because, like, what's going to happen, right? These billionaires are going to buy up all this housing, right? And the rent is going to be set so high that no one's actually going to be able to afford the rent. And so you're just going to end up with a shit ton of squatters. People who are just like, there's like a sea of empty properties. Like you'll have a block and it'll just be empty completely. So people will just move in, right? Because nobody's coming around to check it out. Nobody gives a fuck. These places are all empty. Yeah, leases and deeds are meaningless to begin with. Like the whole thing is just like, it's obviously collapsing. Like it's obviously collapsing. And the idea that like billionaires are just buying, and let's be really real. I actually am of the, like, not real. Let's get a bit conspiratorial, okay? So this is conspiracy. I don't deny it, but it is definitely what I think is like, I see this trajectory. Like these billionaires are not buying up all these houses so they can turn around and rent them, right? They don't care about that. They're billionaires. They don't give a shit about that. Why would they? Why would they give a shit about that at all? They have billions and billions of dollars, right? This is like the big flaw of trickle-down economics. Why would a billionaire invest in, if the goal of investment is to get money, why would you ever invest if you have all the money, right? If the goal of investment is to get money, why would you ever invest if you have all the money? The system fails. It fails on the face of it. And so what they're doing is they're buying up these properties, and they're not buying up the properties so they can turn around and rent them. They don't give a fuck about that. They don't care about that at all. They don't give a shit if people are homeless or anything like that. They're buying up the property for the land. That's it. They don't care that there's houses on the property. They don't care what's on that property. They don't care, right? They want the land. Because when the system collapses, well, more specifically, as people recognize that the system has collapsed, right? The only thing that's going to matter, like having the money is not going to matter that much, right? It's not going to matter having that much money because the economy doesn't work anymore, right? There is no economy. Nobody has money. And so your money, and you've already got like the big houses and all that kind of stuff. So you've already bought everything that you want with the money that you have. So the money itself is not that valuable. You know what is valuable? Land. Land is super valuable. You can do all kinds of crazy shit if you have land. Just take a look at like Walt Disney building Walt Disney World and like these Disney towns and like all this kind of stuff, right? Well, how do you do that? You buy up large sections of land. And so you imagine like some psychotic billionaire like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates buying up land and then setting up Gatesville, right? Or Bezos Town or something like this, right? And it's just gonna be like this megalomaniac psychosis of just like, I'm important because I have a town, right? You will own nothing and be happy. Yeah, actually means you own nothing and just be in debt trying to survive. I gotta tell you guys, like, if I owned nothing, right, and this is what I was doing, like just doing this right here, and I had enough money to pay for this rent and for food, I would be happy. I would be happy. I'm completely pleased with the idea. I don't need a house or any of that kind of stuff. I feel like my footprint is very, very low, and it's incredibly telling that like it's impossible to live in the society this way. That like it's actually more likely, like for some reason, instead of paying people like small subsistence wages in order to just sort of live in the world and be completely fine, we're willing to spend double that amount to put them in prison after they've committed a crime trying to get food for themselves, right? Like we live in this like really like insane backwards thinking society. And I would love to like, I'm completely fine with not owning a whole bunch of, I don't need the big cars or any of this kind of shit. Like, but even that seems to be like a big ask these days. Musk just sold his last house and is now renting? Why? That doesn't sound right, bud. That sounds super, super wrong. Elon Musk renting? What? Why? Why would he ever do this? This has to be just optics, dude. He's not renting. That doesn't sound real. This sounds super fake. He's renting a $50,000 house in Texas. Sold near, but like, I bet you it's something like one of his holdings owns the property and he's renting it from the holding. Is larger part focus? This feels like bullshit. This feels like optics. Like Musk has a very good PR team. His PR is he's got better PR than Bezos does, for sure. Gates has pretty good PR too. Gates tricked everybody into believing that he was just like a kindly old man, right? Like, but Elon Musk has tricked everybody into thinking that he's a genius when he's like just a dumb idiot who has a bunch of money. I just don't think this is real. His partner. No, there's absolutely no, like, who owns the property? Like, they're not actually telling us who owns the property, right? They're not actually telling us who owns the property. Oh, that I rent from SpaceX. So he rents it from his own company. Yeah, this is completely optics. This is completely optics. I'm very minimalist and frugal, but I think this is another step that keeps young people from building any wealth. Yeah, I think that's right. And like, you can't have, capitalists, as much as they keep talking about competition, they don't want competitors, right? And how do you end up with competitors? Well, you let young people build wealth, right? No, get rid of them. We're not gonna build a future society like that. That's not gonna happen. The annual death rate in Canada from exposure to radon-induced lung cancer is 3,200, greater than car accidents, carbon monoxide, and house fires combined. Check your homes for radon. Radon. Ask a socialist why they hate capitalism, and they'll give you a myriad of reasons. Ask a capitalist why they hate socialism, and they'll describe capitalism. Yep. Why CBC is turning off Facebook comments on news posts for a month? Because fucking humans are trash. That's why. Anybody who wants to turn off their comments on videos and stuff, I'm always like, yeah. I never once am like, why are they turning off the comments? It doesn't make any sense. It's because fucking people are trash. Because like everybody there's trolls everywhere, and it's so exhausting dealing with these trolls. Like, you guys are great. But like, trolls come in here, right? And they cause us problems. And so yeah, like CBC turning off Facebook comments, I'm like, yeah, I'm surprised they're only doing it for a month. Like, we don't, and like, since when is like a news organization supposed to be like a dialogue, right? Like, no, we're the news. Here's the news. Go do these comments to your buddies, right? Go do these comments to your friends. Come on this YouTube channel and talk to me about these comments, like all this kind of stuff. Yet they won't need to own a house anyway because they'll be on the move doing gig work. Yeah, exactly. Gig work. What a scam that was. I can't believe that people actually fell into like the gig economy, right? Like, oh, it's the gig economy. Don't worry, it's just the gig economy. It's completely normal and everything's totally fine. It's the gig economy. It's just the Kens and the Karens of the world being like, oh, it's just the gig economy. Karen, what do you think about this gig economy? Oh, it's so nice that they're able to get that work, Oh, it's so good. I can just call them up and they come and deliver stuff to me. It's so good. Fuck. It's because CBC won't let reporters discuss Palestine fairly. Oh, Jeff with the bomb dropping. Oh, interesting. So you think it's straight up censorship. Let's see how deep they get into that. Ample evidence, mental health, journalists. Oh, they're saying that it's like a stress and vitriol. What I was saying, right? Like humans are trash. Public discourse, That's why beginning Wednesday we will close comments. We have built significant audiences, conversation. But you think it has to do with, like... Well, I mean, and it is true. Like, if the CBC releases an article about Israel, there's probably a lot of, like, pro-Palestine stuff in their thingamajig. I wonder what the comment section here has to say. The truth is we spend a considerable amount of attention and resources attempting to moderate. Takes a mental toll. Yeah, they're just kind of agreeing. So I find that this place, On Guard for Thee, is real liberal. Whenever I say anything anti-liberal on Guard for Thee, so it's like you've got Art Canada, which is obviously where like the fascists and conservatives live, and lots of people are subscribed because it was like the first one. And so lots of people are subscribed, but the people who are participating in the comments are the fascists and the conservatives. On Guard for Thee breaks off because they're like tired of dealing with the fascists and conservatives, and it grows pretty quickly. But it's obviously liberal, right? So they're still very pro-capital. They're still very like pro-corporate and like pro status quo, and then. Very quickly, there was a break off from that, and it was Canada Left. And that's where the leftists live. And near as I can tell, it is leftists who live there. Like, they're putting up, like, pro-communist stuff. If you say anti-capitalist stuff, they're on board for it. So, and that's where I post my videos, Canada Left. Yep. No trolls tonight yet, onward. Well, except you, obviously. I'm kidding. CBC Palestine. I butchered that. Policy. CBC journalists told they can't cover Israel-Palestine after demanding fairer coverage. Yikes. Well, I mean, this makes a certain level of sense. Like the CBC is always going to be they're always going to align with the party that's in power. It's just always going to be the way. And like, I think it's good that the CBC exists because I think that like there should be a state-run radio station in this myriad of culture. But right now, because corporate power owns both the media as well as the state apparatus, it's creating like a homogenous sort of one kind of message that comes out. And if the government was suddenly to be like anti-capitalist somehow, right, or even more left-wing, well, the CBC would become more left-wing because ultimately the CBC works on behalf of the state, and if the people in power who have the ability to defund the CBC and make life hard for people in the CBC. So I'm not very surprised to see that, honestly, because the liberals are pro-Israel. Yeah, they don't want to hear what people really think. There's a bit of that too, Ruth. There's a bit of that too. Speaking of talking fairly about Palestine, did you see Jenica Atwin's statement on Israel now just walk back her entire stance on the region and really lost? Yeah. Absolutely Wigwith, and that actually may save Enemy Paul's leadership, because before it was very bad. It looked very, very bad, but now like this Green Party person walking across the aisle and becoming liberal, and then immediately backing off on her position for why she did that. It looks very, very like careerist. It looks very, very careerist, and so it'll probably it could save Enemy Paul. It could save her. We'll see. Big question marks around that. My big question for the Green Party is why do you exist? Why does the Green Party exist, right? And if the Green Party suddenly became a socialist party, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's why you exist. But right now, they're just like neoliberals who think that we should do environmentalism and do a basic income. But I'm like, so like the Liberal Party, right? Like, why do you exist? Like, The liberals are saying we should do stuff about climate change, and hey, here's legislation for basic income too. They're even farther along. Like, why should we bother with you, right? But if these guys were socialists and they were saying like what I am saying in regards to these issues, that the liberals aren't genuine about it, that they're just trying to bullshit us about all of this kind of stuff, that there are things that they could be doing that would be impactful, but it would mean confronting capitalism, then I would be like, oh yeah, that's why the Green Party exists. The Green Party exists to push the country to the left. But right now, they've got a neoliberal who's basically just status quo, might as well be a liberal, right? Like, I don't understand why the Green Party exists. And I guess, like, neither does this East Coast lady, this Jenica, whatever her name is. She's like, oh yeah, why does the Green Party exist? They literally stand for the same thing that the liberals stand for. They don't have a difference in thinking or a difference in policy at the moment. So if Annamie Paul does get ousted or step down, and a socialist takes over the party, then it makes sense. But right now, with this like status quo neoliberalism, I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. Corporate is the only way to go. Rugged individual is a thing of the past. Cooperatives are... Corporate is the only way to go. Boo, Ward, boo. I know I'm misunderstanding you, but I'm going to say boo anyway. Oh, Ward, by the way, you asked me to learn American Pie, and that's a song that I had already I had learned like years and years back, and so I found like a YouTube video that's essentially like a karaoke thing for me to play to. If you tune in 7 o'clock and just remind me about it, I'll play that song for you. It actually, like, it's a long tune, but it's actually quite a good, it's good fun, so I think you'll have fun with it, and I'll have fun with it too. Oh, do you mean? Oh, I see what you're saying, Ward. I got you. Cooperatives. I think cooperatives, yeah, are a good thing for us to invest in, especially because, like, one of the things that I think Canadians are interested in, and I think people are generally interested in, is actual, like, reforms and changes to the system, right? What most Canadians do not want to see is a revolution. I think that that's something that most Canadians agree with. Like, we do not want a full-scale revolution. I do, but I respect that most Canadians do not, and I respect their reasons for why they do not. And so, so they're looking at stuff like cooperatives, basic income, these sorts of things. And they're saying like, oh, these are reforms. These are reforms to the system that we have that make sense, that seem like they would slide in easily. They wouldn't be too disruptive. They wouldn't cause a whole lot of problems. So I support them, and I respect that. I understand. But of course, they'll all fail, right? A basic income fails. Cooperatives fail. The whole thing fails because ultimately there's a small group of sociopaths who own the means of production. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? That all of that will be manipulated and twisted and distorted for the benefit of, 10 sociopaths who own the country. Many commentators are trolls, but the best thing about The Atlantic or NPR was the comment section. Now I don't even go to those websites because the actual stories are garbage. Yeah, it's a shame what has happened to NPR. It seemed to happen very quickly. They've just kind of become, like, pro-capitalist, like they've kind of become just like another wing of the Democratic Party. And I don't really understand how that happened. Because I remember when NPR was like really doing good work and really like sticking it to this corporate power. I just feel like they got bought. And everybody's got a price, man. Everybody's got a price. Like, and I won't lie to you, if some corporation walked up to me and said, hey, John, here's $100 million. Can you never, ever talk about corporations or any of that kind of stuff ever again? I'd be like, yeah, I'd consider it. Like, everybody can be bought. Everybody can be bought. And I look at The Atlantic and I look at NPR and I think, yeah, looks like they got bought. Cooperatives are kryptonite to capitalists. Well, we'll see about that. I feel like capitalists will find a way to wedge themselves in. As long as a capitalist exists, right? It's like you're just allowing a parasite to exist in your body. That like we've seen there's a parasite, there it is, it's a parasite, and instead of saying we have to extract the parasite and get rid of it, right, and then just deal with what life is like without the parasite, it's like we're trying to constantly work around the parasite and be like, well, if we do this, it'll actually help the body over here. But the parasite's always going to try to break that down and always going to work to siphon that energy away into itself and try to make it a part of its larger body, its larger self. And like, if capitalists have to co-opt co-ops in order to survive, they will. Sure, oh yeah, we'll restructure everything. Co-ops for everybody. You have a co-op and you have a co-op. Everybody has a co-op, but I'm still a capitalist, right? Like I'm still investing in these, right? I'm still here, right? Okay, good. So you guys have your little co-ops and you make all your decisions and all that kind of stuff, but I still make money from you for doing nothing, right? Right? Great. Co-ops. All a capitalist has to do is buy the co-op. Just like they already do with smaller companies, then it's not a co-op anymore. Yeah. Or if they can't do that, Robin, right, they can just become a silent investor, right? Have the co-op structure itself completely how it wants to structure itself, and then you just have this one person who does no work, puts in no labor, is a parasite, and just siphons money away, right? And if you're a capitalist, right, you just invest in like 1,000 of these, like in 100 of these or whatever, right? And you just have like small investments all over the place, and then Bob's your uncle. You're a parasite, siphoning productivity away from the co-op. And the co-op can do what it wants. It can make its ideas, it can have its thing, all that kind of stuff. I don't care. As long as at the end of the day, I get a paycheck for nothing, right? That's what a capitalist wants. Just, I get a paycheck for nothing, right? I'm on the golf course making money doing nothing. You guys, and in fact, I would actually think that's actually even more beneficial for the capitalist, because the capitalist has even less responsibility, right? Oh, you want all the decision making and all of that kind of stuff and all that kind of, great, go off and do that, right? I won't even show up to the board meetings as long as I get a paycheck for doing nothing, because that's what capitalists do. So I don't think capitalists would be naturally against co-ops, right? Because it maintains their position of wealth and power. And like, how does a co-op even get started? Well, it needs a loan from a bank, a capitalist organization, right? So yeah, fine. Capitalists look at a situation and ask, how many middlemen can I insert into the situation with their hands out, palm up? Yep. Yeah. Like, how can we take a functioning system and wedge ourselves into crucial positions to act as gatekeepers, right? That's all they are. They're just gatekeepers, right? You've got to pay their toll. That's it. That's all you're doing is you're paying tolls. And when you actually look at what they're actually doing, it's nothing. They don't do anything, right? They are a net negative drain on the system because they're worthless. They provide no value. They do nothing important. They don't even make decisions. If they actually have to make, the only decision that they'll make is who they're going to hire to go make their decisions for them, right? That's it. And then they just fuck off and do whatever they want because they're fucking billionaires. Great meeting with ambassadors of Mexico, Venezuela, El Salvador, Panama, and Cuba to advance together initiatives for gender equality, girls' education, women and biodiversity, conservation, and climate change, kindly hosted by Ambassador of Mexico. Wow, this is actually really cool. So this is coming from the Embassy of Nicaragua. So, Embassy of Nicaragua, they've got Venezuela, Mexico, El Salvador, Panama, and Cuba. So that is El Salvador. They say Guatemala? So not Honduras. Wonder why. Venezuela and Cuba. Yeah, of course Venezuela wants to get involved in this, man. Venezuela is like trying to get connected to all this kind of stuff. If they could get Colombia involved, but Colombia's going through its own shit right now. And then Cuba, that's a really cool, like, alliance of people, man. Like, that's a really cool, like, you call that the Caribbean Alliance. I like it. The Carabiners. The Carabiners. Oh, I shouldn't say that. The Caribbeans. The Carabiner. Damn it. My apologies if I offended anybody with that statement. I didn't mean to. I stumbled into it honestly. Co-ops can and should build in poison pills. I love it. I love it, Ward. In their constitution that disallow capitalist overtake. Well, and it's not so much capitalist overtake, right? Like, the capitalist just needs to own like 5%, right? Like, if I own 5% of like a whole lot of stuff, right? I don't have controlling, I don't have any of that kind of stuff, right? I'm just getting money for nothing, right? And then you get your big pile of money for having done nothing, and then you go destroy people with it, because that's what capitalists do. So unless we like actively and explicitly and implicitly attempt to extract capitalists out of our society on purpose, any institution we attempt to erect, they'll just infect. They'll just infect, even if it's in small, subtle ways, right? They don't need to take the co-op over. They don't need to like take it over and manipulate it and twist it and do any of that kind of stuff. They literally just need to own a small part of it, right? Okay, I'll own a small part of it, do nothing of value whatsoever, and I'll make even a little bit of money off of you. And if I do that 100,000 times or 1,000 times or however many times, then I'll get a big pile of money over here that'll put in an offshore account somewhere, and your economy will collapse simply because you're paying for me. So we have to actually like extract these capitalists. We have to actually be like, no, you're not doing anything of value. Goodbye, right? Like we would extract any parasite. And like just simply attempting to erect other institutions, like the capitalists are gonna just get involved and take them over. Yeah, they're highly regulated already. And I've definitely talked to people who like are involved in co-ops, and you know, banks try to fucking break these places up. Like, they don't want co-ops to exist. Vladimir Stalin. That's pretty funny. It's just a face swap. That's pretty good. I like to think that Stalin and Lenin would have loved technology, man. I like to think that they would have just, like, Trotsky would have actually been like one of these guys. Yeah, one person, one share. That is the way to do it. Like, one person, one share. And like, why keep these capitalists around? Some of my students are carrying around their documents just in case they get detained by ICE. Their parents are making contingency plans for childcare and finances in case of detainment. I am not overreacting when I say the parallels to 1937 Germany are stunning. Yep. What is happening and what the ICE detention center... Like, the ICE detention centers are concentration camps. Calling them anything other than that is just a form of delusion, right? It's completely the same thing. You're detaining people based on their race, based on their country of origin. And like, you see, like, disease outbreaks in these places. You see, like, abuse going through these places. The separation of children from their parents, like all this kind of stuff. And like, yeah, of course, like if I was a student who had emigrated here from Mexico, let's say, even if I had done so legally, I'd be fucking walking around with my documents. I'd be walking around with my documents, dude, so that when they put me and attempted to get me to do some kind of confession without my lawyer present or something, I could literally be like, here are my documents. This is who I am. This is where I'm from. Right? Absolutely. Such is the sad state of America. Let's pause for a moment, just enjoy it. This is Algonquin. I do love this about our Ontario, man. They're like politics and memes and like all this kind of stuff, but there are a couple of people who are just like, here's a beautiful shot. We went camping, check it out. And I'm like, that is some good stuff. Let's upvote that. Remind yourself that there's a larger world out there, right? And this is a good note to end on. We're getting to the end of this. That's such a beautiful shot, eh? I have not been camping in far too long, man. Far too long. I need to get out into the wilderness again. We all really got to get out into the wilderness. Remind ourselves what this is all about, right? Get disconnected from the hive, you know? Get reconnected to the natural world again. Because, like, it is a beautiful world. It is a beautiful world, right? And we are supposed to be living in it, but we don't. We don't. We're trapped in this sort of capitalist machine that pretends like it's the real world when it's just making like fake little doodads and gizmos and distractionary little toys, you know? Oh. Okay. I think that this has been a good stream. This has been a good stream. Let's quickly, just before we close it down, let's see if there's any new news on this. Doesn't look like. So it looks like it was just like, I should say just, but it looks like it was like one strike. All right. Well, considering how crazy things are in the world, guys, you are doing really wonderfully. You really are. You're making good decisions. You're working hard. Good night, Ruth. Thanks for being here. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, guys. If you've got that dollar jangling around your pocket, please be sure to send it my way. We need to be supporting leftist voices. Like, we got to be pushing back. We got to be pushing back. And if you value your time with me, even $1 helps. All right, guys. Good luck. We're going to need it.